I just got a scratch. But the alien girl started licking my wound. What the? Reaches its explosive climax when Marcus is mortally wounded, defending Ceres from corporate attackers. Under biolunar light, she initiates a forbidden symbiotic ritual, their energies merging as skin meets skin. As his wounds vanish, Marcus awakens with newfound psionic abilities, furiously repelling their attackers and embracing his destiny as Ceres's catalyst. The acrid smell of fuel and recycled air hung in the dimly lit hangar of Skyspear 7, the orbital freight station that served as the last outpost before the uncharted trade routes. Captain Marcus Mars Rain ran a calloused hand through his salt and pepper hair, squinting at the contract displayed on his tablet. The year 2384 had not been kind to independent haulers like him, but this job, transporting a sealed biotech container to Aurora Evand, promised enough credits to keep the nightjar flying for another quarter. Terms acceptable, Captain. The corporate liaison's hologram flickered, his smile never reaching his eyes. Marcus grunted. 14 years of smuggling turned legitimate transport had taught him to read between the lines of corporate speak. Payment on delivery, no questions asked about the cargo, and a bonus for beating the standard route time. Seems straightforward enough. Excellent. The container will be loaded within the hour. Helicorp appreciates your discretion. As the hologram dissolved, Marcus turned to face his crew. The nightjar wasn't much to look at. A battered Class 4 freighter, with more patch jobs than original hull. But she was home to the four of them. Tessa Wrench. Kim looked up from the engine manifold she was recalibrating, her face streaked with lubricant. At 53, she was the oldest of the crew, with hands so steady they could realign a quantum drive blindfolded. Another corporate gig? Thought you swore off those after Proxima. Bills don't pay themselves, Marcus replied, moving toward the ship's loading bay. Rico, what's our transit window look like? Rico Vale didn't look up from her navigation calculations, her fingers dancing across multiple screens. Her efficiency was legendary among frontier pilots. Some said she could plot a course through an asteroid field while sleeping. If we depart within 3 hours, we can slip through the Karlov belt before the solar flares hit. 14 hours to Aurora Imsh, give or take. Make it 12, Marcus said. There's a time bonus. From the cockpit, Soren Pike grunted his acknowledgement. The taciturn pilot rarely spoke more than 5 words in sequence, but his flying skills more than compensated for his lack of conversation. What's the cargo? Wrench asked, wiping her hands on a rag that had seen better days. Marcus shrugged. Sealed biotech container. Beyond that, not our business. It's always our business, Rico countered, finally looking up. Her dark eyes narrowed. Last time we transported, not our business. We ended up with a hull breach and 3 weeks of decontamination protocols. This is different, Marcus insisted, though the tension in his shoulders suggested otherwise. Clean corporate contract, premium pay, straightforward run. Said every smuggler before prison, Wrench muttered, but returned to her work. Marcus moved to help clear the loading bay, pushing aside crates and securing loose equipment. The nightjar had seen better days, but she was reliable when it counted. As he shoved a heavy tool cabinet against the bulkhead, his boot caught on an uneven section of decking. He stumbled forward, his forearm scraping against a jagged piece of metal plating that had worked loose from years of hasty repairs. Shit, he hissed, pulling back his sleeve to reveal a long, shallow cut. Blood welled up, a thin crimson line against his tanned skin. It wasn't serious. He'd had far worse, but it stung like hell. The loading bay doors hummed open, revealing a Helicorp transport team with the promised container. Alongside them stood a figure Marcus hadn't expected, tall and lithe, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the hangar lights. Bioluminescent freckles dotted her face and arms, pulsing gently with what he assumed was her heartbeat. Captain Rain. Her voice carried a melodic quality, the universal translator barely keeping up with her native tongue's subtle harmonics. "I am Saris Alvine, assigned medical overseer for this transport." Marcus frowned. "Contract didn't mention a passenger." "A recent addition," she replied, stepping into the bay. Her movements were fluid, almost hypnotic. "The cargo requires specific environmental conditions that must be monitored throughout transit." Before Marcus could protest, she noticed his bleeding arm. Her luminescent eyes widened, and without warning, she moved toward him with startling speed. Bending down, she grasped his wrist with surprising strength and, before he could pull away, lowered her face to his wound. The sensation of her tongue, cool and slightly textured, against his broken skin, sent a shock through Marcus's system. He jerked back instinctively, but the damage, or rather, the miracle, was already done. Where the cut had been, the skin was now sealed, a faint, silver line the only evidence of injury. "What the hell?" Marcus stared at his arm, then at Saris, whose expression remained impassive. The loading bay had gone silent. Wrench stood frozen, a wrench actually slipping from her fingers to clatter on the deck. Rico had emerged from her navigation station, mouth slightly agape. Even Soren had appeared at the cockpit doorway, his perpetual frown deepening. "I apologize for the cultural breach," Saris said calmly. "My species' saliva contains healing enzymes that accelerate cellular regeneration. It was instinct." "You licked me," Marcus stated flatly, still staring at the healed wound. "Yes. Again, my apologies. On my world, it would be considered rude not to offer healing when it is needed." The Helicorp transport team, seemingly unfazed by the interaction, had already secured the container to the Nightjar's cargo locks. "Container delivered, Captain," the lead technician announced. "Transit authorization codes have been transmitted to your navigation system." As they departed, leaving Saris and her small travel case behind, Marcus finally recovered his composure. "Look, I don't know what kind of arrangement you have with Helicorp, but my ship isn't a passenger liner." "I am not a passenger," Saris replied. "I am an essential component of this transport. The contents of that container must be maintained at specific biochemical equilibrium, which only I am qualified to monitor." She paused, her freckles pulsing slightly faster. "Unless you wish to forfeit the contract." Marcus glanced at his crew, reading their expressions. Wrench looked intrigued, Rico suspicious, and Soren, well, Soren looked like Soren. "Fine," he conceded. "But you stay out of the way. Follow ship protocols and no more. Impromptu medical interventions without asking first." Saris inclined her head slightly. "Acceptable terms, Captain." As the crew returned to pre-flight preparations, Marcus couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that he'd just agreed to far more than a simple transport job. He flexed his healed arm, watching the silver scar catch the light. Something was off about this contract, about Saris, about the innocuous-looking container now secured in his cargo hold. Years of smuggling had honed his instincts for trouble, and right now, those instincts were screaming. With a sigh, he headed for the cockpit. Whatever he'd gotten them into, there was only one way forward now. "Soren, begin pre-launch sequence. Rico, file our flight plan with Skyspear Control. Wrench." Yeah, the mechanic interrupted. "Make sure this bucket of bolts holds together." "On it, Captain." Marcus settled into his command chair, eyes drawn to the mysterious container visible on the cargo bay monitor. Next to it, Saris stood perfectly still, her gaze fixed on the container as if listening to something inside. "Let's get this show on the road," he muttered, mostly to himself. "The sooner we deliver, the sooner we get paid, and the sooner things get back to normal." If only he knew how wrong he was. Hours into their journey, Marcus found himself unable to sleep. The nightjar hummed softly around him, the familiar vibrations of the engines, usually enough to lull him into dreamless rest. Tonight, However, his mind kept returning to the cargo and to their unusual passenger. Giving up on sleep, he pulled on his boots and made his way to the galley, hoping a cup of synthetic coffee might clear his head. To his surprise, Saris was already there, studying the ship's archived star charts on a portable display. "Don't you sleep?" he asked, programming the beverage dispenser. "Not as you do," she replied without looking up. "My species requires brief meditative periods, rather than prolonged unconsciousness." The dispenser chimed, and Marcus took his steaming cup, leaning against the counter. "So, what's your real interest in this cargo? And don't give me that assigned medical overseer line again. I've hauled enough contraband to know when someone's babysitting something valuable." Saris deactivated the star chart and regarded him with those unsettling luminescent eyes. "You are more perceptive than Helicorp gave you credit for, Captain. Occupational hazard." She seemed to consider her words carefully. "The container holds a Genesis sample, a bioengineered specimen of immense scientific value." "Valuable to who?" "To everyone. And dangerous in the wrong hands." Her freckles pulsed more rapidly. "That is why I was assigned to this transport. I am not merely monitoring the sample. I am protecting it." Marcus frowned. "Protecting it from what?" As if on cue, the ship's proximity alarm blared. Rico's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, to the bridge! We've got company!" Marcus was moving before she finished speaking, Saris close behind. They reached the cockpit to find Rico and Soren staring at the sensor display, faces grim. "Corporate security drones," Rico reported. "They just decloaked off our starboard bow. They're broadcasting arrest warrants for unauthorized biotech transport." "That's impossible," Marcus growled. "We have all the proper clearances." Saris stepped forward. "They are not Helicorp. Look at the insignia." She was right. The drones bore the emblem of Biosite, Helicorp's chief competitor in the frontier biotech market. "How did they find us?" Wrench demanded, entering the cockpit, wiping sleep from her eyes. "Questions later," Marcus replied, dropping into his chair. "Soren, evasive maneuvers. Rico, find us a way out of here." The nightjar lurched as Soren pushed the engines, veering away from the approaching drones. The aged freighter wasn't built for speed, but Soren's piloting skills made up for many of her shortcomings. "There's an old mining outpost on the dark side of that moon," Rico suggested, fingers flying across her navigation console. "The mineral deposits should mask our signature long enough to lose them." "Do it," Marcus ordered, then turned to Saris. "Time for the truth. All of it." Her expression remained calm despite the chaos. "The Genesis sample is a seed, a biological matrix capable of rewriting life on a planetary scale. Helicorp created it for terraforming purposes, but its potential as a weapon has made it coveted." "And you're what, the security detail?" "I am a guardian," she said simply. "My people are sworn to protect such technologies from misuse." The ship shuddered as a warning shot from the lead drone grazed their shields. "Captain," Soren's quiet voice cut through the tension, "we have another problem." The sensor display showed a second group of ships emerging from the shadow of the moon, the very place they'd been heading. "Pirates." Wrench identified them immediately. "Looks like the Kasabian clan from their configurations." Marcus swore under his breath. Caught between corporate hunters and frontier pirates, it was like being trapped between a supernova and a black hole. "The Kasabians have contacts on Skyspear 7, Rico said. "They must have been tipped off about the cargo." The comm system crackled to life, a gruff voice filling the cockpit. "Attention, Nightjar. This is Captain Vex Kasabian. We know what you're carrying, and we're prepared to offer double whatever your employer promised. Dock with our flagship, transfer the cargo, and you can be on your way. Easy credits." Marcus glanced at his crew, then at Saris. The alien woman's eyes had darkened, her freckles now pulsing an ominous deep blue. "If the Genesis sample falls into either biosites or the pirates' hands, The consequences would be catastrophic, she said quietly. Captain, Wrench spoke up. I don't like corporate games any more than you do, but if that container is half as dangerous as she says... Marcus made his decision. Soren, set course for the Karlov belt. Wrench, I need everything you can give the engines. Rico, plot us a path through the solar flares, the nastiest route you can find. That's suicide, Rico protested. The flares will fry our navigation systems. That's the idea, Marcus replied grimly. They can't follow what they can't track. As the crew scrambled to execute his orders, he turned back to Saris. You'd better be worth the trouble, Guardian. For the first time, she smiled, a slight curve of her lips that sent an inexplicable chill down his spine. I assure you, Captain Rain, I am... The Nightjar screamed through space, pushing her ancient engines beyond safe parameters. Behind them, the biosite drones tried to follow, but lacked the maneuverability to navigate the increasingly erratic debris field at the edge of the Karlov belt. The pirate vessels, more adaptable but less well-shielded, fell back as the first waves of solar radiation washed over the region. We're approaching the flare zone, Rico announced, her voice tight with concentration. Last chance to reconsider. Captain. Marcus checked the sensor display. They'd gained some distance, but not enough. Proceed as planned. Wrench, how are the shields holding? They're not going to like what's coming, the mechanic replied from engineering. But I've rerouted power from non-essential systems. We might survive. Emphasis on might. Everyone strap in, Marcus ordered, securing his harness. He noticed Saris doing the same, her movements precise despite the ship's increasingly violent shuddering. The first solar flare hit them like a physical blow, the Nightjar bucking like a wounded animal. Alarms blared as systems overloaded and reset. The lights flickered, plunging the cockpit into momentary darkness before emergency power kicked in. Navigation's down, Rico shouted over the cacophony. Flying blind! Soren? Marcus turned to his pilot. The taciturn man's hands never stopped moving across the controls. Managing, he grunted, which from him was practically a soliloquy. Another flare washed over them, stronger than the first. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, sending unsecured items floating briefly before crashing back to the deck. Engine temperature critical. Wrench's voice crackled through static. We can't take much more of this. Marcus looked at the external feeds. The solar flares created a spectacular, deadly light show, streams of plasma illuminating the surrounding space like nature's fireworks. Beautiful, if you ignored the fact that it was trying to kill them. A third flare, more powerful than the previous two combined, slammed into the Nightjar. The impact threw Marcus against his restraints hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. Emergency systems wailed, red warning lights bathing the cockpit in a hellish glow. We've lost the port engine, Wrench's panicked voice came through. Containment systems failing. We need to shut down before... The rest of her warning was lost as the ship lurched violently to starboard, spinning them into an uncontrolled roll. For several heart-stopping moments, Marcus thought they were finished. Then, gradually, Soren managed to stabilize their flight path using the remaining engine and maneuvering thrusters. Status report, Marcus demanded, once he could breathe again. Port engine's gone, Wrench confirmed, coughing through the smoke that now filled engineering. Starboard's hanging on by a thread. Life support at 60% and falling. We're not going to make it to Aurora Empine. Captain. Nearest viable landing site? Marcus asked Rico. She struggled with her damaged console. Navigation's still rebooting. Best guess? Korath V. Mining colony about 3 hours away at our current speed. Not much there, Soren commented. Better than dying in space, Marcus replied. Set course for Korath V. As the crew worked to keep the wounded Nightjar flying, Marcus unstrapped and made his way back to the cargo hold. He needed to see for himself that their precious cargo, the thing that had nearly gotten them killed, was intact. The container appeared undamaged, its environmental controls still functioning on their independent power supply. Saris stood beside it, one hand resting on its surface, her eyes closed in concentration. "Is it still stable?" Marcus asked, approaching cautiously. "Yes," she answered without opening her eyes. "The sample is resilient. More so than your ship, it seems." "You knew this would happen," he accused. "Not the solar flares specifically, but some kind of trouble. You knew we were transporting a target." Saris finally looked at him, her freckles pulsing slowly now, almost sadly. "I suspected. The Genesis sample is too valuable to move without attracting attention. Helicorp chose your ship precisely because you are unremarkable. A routine cargo transport, beneath notice." "Except we weren't beneath notice, were we?" Marcus leaned against a bulkhead, suddenly exhausted. "Someone talked. Someone knew." "There are spies everywhere in the corporate wars," Saris agreed. "And the Genesis technology has been sought by many factions for decades." Marcus studied her. "Including your people? These Guardians? We do not seek to use it. We seek to protect it, and all life from its misuse." "Noble," Marcus remarked, not bothering to hide his skepticism. "And I'm sure you have no personal stake in this whatsoever." For the first time, Saris appeared troubled. She hesitated. "The situation is complicated, Captain." "It always is." He pushed off from the bulkhead. "Well, we'll have plenty of time to discuss complications on Korath V, while we're scrounging for parts to repair my ship." As he turned to leave, a strange sensation washed over him. A brief, disorienting flash of something. Images, feelings not his own. A world of crystalline spires and violet skies. Faces, alien yet somehow familiar, looking at him with hope, with expectation. He stumbled, catching himself against a crate. "Captain!" Saris moved toward him, concern evident in her voice. "I'm fine," he insisted, though the lingering echo of those foreign images left him shaken. "Just tired. It's been a long day." As he made his way back to the cockpit, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just glimpsed something he wasn't meant to see, and that the complications Sarah spoke of were far greater than he could imagine. Korath V loomed before them, a dusty gray orb scarred by centuries of mining operations. Once a profitable chromium source, the colony now survived on maintenance contracts from passing freighters and the occasional supply run to the deeper mining operations on the planet's far side. "Not exactly a vacation spot," Wrench observed as they began their descent, the nightjar groaning in protest. "Beggars can't be choosers," Marcus replied. "Rico, any response to our landing request?" "Affirmative. We're cleared for Docking Bay 7. They say they've got basic repair facilities, but parts for a ship this old might be hard to come by." The landing was rougher than Soren's usual precision work, a testament to how badly damaged the nightjar truly was. As the engines powered down with an alarming series of clanks and hisses, Marcus addressed his crew. "Wrench, assess the damage and compile a parts list. Rico, see what you can salvage from the navigation system. Soren, secure the ship. I'll negotiate with the local authorities." He turned to Saris. "You stay with the cargo. Don't open the door for anyone." The alien nodded, her expression grave. "Captain, we should not linger here longer than necessary. If we were tracked—" "One problem at a time," he cut her off. "First, we fix the ship. Then we worry about who might be following us." Korath V's main settlement was a hodgepodge of prefabricated structures and repurposed mining equipment, all coated in a fine layer of gray dust. The docking authority, a wizened man with skin like tanned leather, took Marcus's credit transfer with suspicious eyes. "That's a lot of damage for a routine navigational error," he remarked, scanning the nightjar's exterior. "Solar flares in the Karlov belt," Marcus explained. "Knocked out our nav system. Uh-huh. The man pocketed the credit chip. Well, whatever you're running from, it ain't my business. Parts dealers 2 levels down. Tell Mira I sent you. Might get you a 5% discount. Marcus bristled at the assumption, but held his tongue. The less attention they drew, the better. 3 hours later, he returned to the nightjar with mixed news. The parts they needed most urgently were available but expensive. The more specialized components would have to be fabricated, a process that would take at least 2 days. 2 days? Wrench looked up from the engine she'd been dismantling. Captain, we're sitting ducks here. I know, Marcus replied grimly. But we don't have a choice. Wrench, you and Rico start on the repairs we can make now. Soren and I will take shifts watching the cargo. As night fell on Karath V, a relative term, as the perpetual industrial haze turned the sky from light gray to dark gray, Marcus found himself unable to sleep for the second night in a row. This time, however, it wasn't just concern over their situation keeping him awake. The strange visions he'd experienced near the cargo hold had returned in his dreams, more vivid than before. He'd seen a planet of impossible beauty, felt a connection to it that defied explanation, and he'd seen himself standing beside Ceres, facing some nameless threat with a determination that felt both foreign and familiar. Giving up on rest. He made his way to the cargo hold where Soren was supposed to be on watch. To his surprise, the pilot wasn't there. Only Ceres remained, still in the same position she'd maintained for hours, one hand resting on the container. "Where's Soren?" Marcus demanded. "He received an alert from the cockpit," Ceres replied. "Some kind of sensor anomaly. He left to investigate approximately 7 minutes ago." Marcus frowned. The ship's internal comms should have alerted him to any unusual activity. He reached for his communicator, only to find it dead. "Something's wrong," he muttered, moving toward the cargo hold's control panel. "We need to—" The ship's emergency lights suddenly activated, bathing everything in pulsing red. The cargo bay doors, which should have been securely locked, began to cycle open. "We're being breached," Marcus realized, lunging for the manual override. Too late. The doors were already sliding apart, revealing a squad of heavily armed figures in corporate tactical gear. "Biosite Security Division," the lead operative announced through his helmet's external speaker. "Step away from the container and place your hands on your head." Marcus froze, calculating their options. The Nightjar's weapons locker was on the other side of the ship. Soren and the others were nowhere to be seen. It was just him and Ceres against at least 6 armed operatives. "You have 3 seconds to comply," the operative continued. 3, 2... "Wait," Ceres stepped forward, her voice calm. "You don't understand what you're interfering with. The Genesis sample cannot be—" The operative fired, a stun bolt that should have dropped Ceres where she stood. Instead, she moved with blinding speed, her form blurring as she somehow redirected the energy, sending it crackling harmlessly into a nearby bulkhead. "Lethal force authorized!" the operative barked, and his squad raised their weapons. Marcus didn't think. He just acted. Diving forward, he tackled Ceres just as multiple energy bolts converged on her position. They hit the deck hard, rolling behind a stack of supply crates as the air sizzled with weapons fire. "That was unexpected," he gasped, checking himself for injuries. "Your intervention was appreciated," Ceres replied, her eyes now glowing with an internal light that hadn't been there before. "Though unnecessary, I am capable of defending myself." "Yeah, I noticed the fancy moves with the stun bolt. Any other abilities I should know about?" Before she could answer, a canister landed nearby, releasing a dense cloud of greenish gas. "Neural suppressant," Ceres identified it, covering her mouth. "Designed to target synaptic functions across multiple species. We cannot stay here." Marcus's head was already beginning to swim, his vision blurring at the edges. "Nightjar has Emergency protocols, he managed, fighting against the encroaching numbness. Need to reach the cockpit. Supporting each other, they stumbled toward the cargo hold's secondary exit. The biosite operatives were advancing methodically, secure in the knowledge that the gas would soon render their targets helpless. They had almost reached the exit when a second squad of armed figures appeared, blocking their escape. These weren't corporate troops, though. Their mismatched armor and crude weapon modifications marked them as pirates. The Kasabians had found them. Well, a burly man with a cybernetic eye grinned through his rebreather mask. Looks like Biosite saved us the trouble of breaking in. Now we just need to break them, and take what's ours. Caught in the crossfire between corporate enforcers and pirate raiders, with the neural suppressant gas steadily robbing him of coordination. Marcus made a desperate gamble, lunging for a nearby maintenance panel. He smashed the emergency override, plunging the entire section into darkness as the ship's safety protocols activated, sealing off the compromised area. In the confusion, he grabbed Saris's arm, her skin cool and smooth beneath his fingers, and pulled her through a narrow service duct that wrench used for accessing the ship's internal systems. "Where are we going?" Saris whispered, as they crawled through the claustrophobic space, the sounds of conflict growing distant behind them. "Maintenance bay," Marcus replied, fighting against the gas's effects. "Has independent life support. Can purge the suppressant from our systems." They emerged in the small chamber, where Wrench performed the ship's more delicate repairs. Marcus sealed the access panel behind them and activated the room's environmental controls, programming a complete air exchange. As fresh oxygen flooded the compartment, Marcus felt his head begin to clear. Saris, too, seemed to recover quickly, her freckles gradually resuming their normal luminescent pattern. "The crew," she said suddenly. "Where are they?" Marcus checked the ship's internal sensors. "Life signs in the forward storage compartment. They're alive, but not moving. Probably captured." "And the Genesis sample?" "Still in the cargo hold. But Biosite and the Kasabians appear to be fighting over it." He studied the sensor readings. "This might work to our advantage. Let them weaken each other while we figure out how to free the crew." Saris moved closer, examining the display. "The pirates outnumber the corporate forces, if they secure the sample." "One disaster at a time," Marcus interrupted. "First priority is my crew." The alien's luminescent eyes fixed on him. "The sample is my priority, Captain. Millions of lives depend on it. And my crew's lives depend on me," he countered. "Look, I didn't ask to be caught up in your interstellar biotech war. I took a job. I got screwed. And now my people are paying the price." "Your people are in danger because the sample is valuable," Saris insisted. "The Kasabians will use them as leverage to secure my cooperation in activating it." "Activating it? I thought it was just a sample, a seed." Saris hesitated, then sighed. "The Genesis matrix requires a catalyst to initialize its programming sequence. The Guardians, my people, are genetically compatible catalysts." Understanding dawned. "That's why you're so valuable. You're not just protecting the sample. You're the key to using it." She nodded grimly. "And now, you understand why neither Biosite nor the Kasabians can be allowed to possess both me and the sample." Marcus processed this new information, weighing options that all seemed equally dangerous. Finally, he made a decision. "All right, here's the plan. We're going to create a diversion near the cargo hold, something big enough to draw both groups. While they're occupied, we free the crew, grab the sample, and make for the escape pods. The Nightjar is a lost cause at this point," Marcus finished for her. "Sometimes you have to know when to walk away." Saris studied him, her expression unreadable. "You would abandon your ship to save your crew?" "In a heartbeat," he replied without hesitation. "The Nightjar's just metal and circuitry. Replaceable. My people aren't." Something in her demeanor shifted, a subtle softening. Your loyalty is admirable, Captain. I will help you rescue your crew. And I'll help you secure your sample, he promised. After that, we go our separate ways. Even as he said it, Marcus felt a strange reluctance at the thought of parting from the mysterious alien guardian. He attributed it to the lingering effects of the neural suppressant and focused on the task at hand. Using the maintenance tunnels, they made their way toward the auxiliary control room, a backup system that could operate the Nightjar's functions in case the main bridge was compromised. Along the way, they gathered what weapons they could find, a cutting torch for Marcus, and a set of maintenance tools that Saris somehow made look dangerous. The diversion needs to be convincing, Marcus explained, as they reached the auxiliary controls. Something that threatens the sample without actually damaging it. The environmental systems, Saris suggested. If we trigger a containment breach alert in the cargo hold, both factions will be forced to respond to protect the sample. Good thinking. Marcus accessed the environmental controls. A fake radiation leak should do it. Harmful to organics, but the sample's container is shielded against it. As he programmed the false alert, Saris watched the security feeds. The crew is still in the forward compartment. 2 guards, pirates, judging by their equipment. We'll handle them, Marcus assured her, finalizing the commands. Ready? She nodded, her freckles pulsing with what he was beginning to recognize as anticipation. Here goes nothing. He activated the protocol. Immediately, warning klaxons blared throughout the ship. The cargo hold's emergency lighting switched to a pulsing purple, the universal warning for radiation danger. On the security feeds, they watched as both the biosite operatives and the Kasabian pirates reacted with alarm, several rushing toward the environmental control stations. Now, Marcus urged, and they set off through the maintenance tunnels toward the forward compartment. They emerged behind a stack of supply crates, giving them a clear view of the situation. Wrench, Rico, and Soren sat bound and gagged in the center of the room, watched over by 2 bored-looking pirates armed with neural disruptors. Marcus caught Saris's eye and mouthed a silent countdown. 3, 2, 1. They burst from hiding simultaneously, Marcus going low while Saris went high. The pirates barely had time to register the threat before they were neutralized, one by Marcus's shoulder tackle, the other by a precise strike from Saris that seemed to paralyze the man instantly. About damn time, Wrench muttered as Marcus removed her gag and cut her bonds. Thought you'd abandoned us for your blue girlfriend. She's not my... Never mind. Marcus moved to free Rico and Soren. We've got about 3 minutes before they realize the radiation alert is fake. We need to grab the sample and get to the escape pods. Rico rubbed her wrists, wincing. The Kasabians disabled the escape pod launch mechanisms when they boarded. Standard pirate procedure. I can override it, Soren spoke up, his quiet voice determined. Need 5 minutes at the engineering console. You've got 3, Marcus replied. Wrench, you and Rico go with him. Secure a pod for launch. Saris and I will retrieve the sample. Captain, Wrench began to protest. That's an order, he cut her off. If we're not there in 10 minutes, launch anyway. Head for the colony's central complex. Plenty of people. Harder for them to follow. The crew exchanged glances but nodded. They understood the risks. Don't die, Captain, Rico said simply. Paperwork's a nightmare when you die. Despite everything, Marcus smiled. I'll keep that in mind. As the crew departed through the maintenance tunnel, Marcus turned to Saris. Ready for part 2? Her expression was solemn. Captain, there is something you should know before we proceed. The connection you have been experiencing, the visions of my world, they are not accidental. What do you mean? When I healed your wound, a bond began to form. My people call it Salandris, a linking of essences. It is rare, especially between species, but sometimes compatible individuals resonate. Marcus stared at her. You're saying we're, what, Psychically linked? In simplistic terms, yes. The bond is still forming, still weak, but it exists. That is why you see my world, feel connections to it. And you didn't think to mention this earlier, he demanded, suddenly angry. I did not believe it would progress so quickly, she admitted. Normally, such bonds take weeks to develop. The fact that ours has advanced in days is unprecedented. Before Marcus could respond, a distant explosion rocked the ship. The pirates and corporate forces had apparently moved beyond competing to actively fighting each other. We'll discuss this later, he decided, checking the pirate's weapon before tossing it to Saris. Assuming we survive. They made their way toward the cargo hold, using the maintenance tunnels where possible and moving cautiously through the corridors where not. The sounds of conflict grew louder, energy weapons discharging, men shouting, the occasional explosion as something volatile was hit. They paused at the final junction before the cargo hold. Peering around the corner, the scene was chaos. Biosite operatives entrenched behind makeshift barricades, exchanging fire with the more numerous but less disciplined pirates. Between them, seemingly forgotten in the escalating violence, sat the Genesis samples container. This is our chance, Marcus whispered. They're so busy trying to kill each other. They've lost focus on what they came for. Saris nodded, her eyes fixed on the container. We will have only seconds once we reveal ourselves. Then we'd better make them count. Marcus took a deep breath, then reached for the junction box beside them. With a quick twist of the cutting torch, he severed the power relays. The cargo hold plunged into darkness, emergency lighting struggling to activate through damaged systems. In the momentary confusion, Marcus and Saris sprinted for the container, keeping low to avoid the wild shots now being fired by both factions. They reached the container simultaneously, each grabbing one handle. It was heavier than it looked, requiring both of them to lift it. This way, Marcus grunted, nodding toward a service corridor that would lead them to the escape pod bay. They had made it halfway across the cargo hold when a spotlight suddenly illuminated them. A tactical light mounted on a biosite operative's weapon. Targets acquired, the operative shouted. Neutralize them. Energy bolts sizzled past them as they ran, the container between them growing heavier with each step. One shot grazed Marcus's shoulder, the searing pain nearly causing him to drop his side of the load. Almost there, he gasped as they reached the service corridor. Behind them, the conflict had shifted, both factions now focusing their efforts on pursuit rather than fighting each other. Footsteps pounded, gaining on them as they struggled with their unwieldy burden. They turned a corner and found themselves facing a dead end. A collapsed section of ceiling blocked the corridor, debris piled high enough to prevent passage. No, Marcus breathed, setting down the container to examine the obstruction. We can't move this. We need to go back, find another way. There is no time, Sarah said, her voice strangely calm. She placed a hand on his injured shoulder, and immediately the pain receded, replaced by a cooling sensation. The others are waiting. The pod is ready. How do you... He stopped as the realization hit him. The bond. You can sense them? She nodded. And they are in danger. We must hurry. The approaching footsteps grew louder. Decisions had to be made. The maintenance shaft. Marcus pointed to a narrow opening near the floor. It's tight, but we might fit. The container won't, though. Saris knelt beside the container, her hands moving over its surface in a complex pattern. With a soft hiss, a panel slid open, revealing a small, glowing object nestled in a bed of silvery liquid. The actual sample is much smaller than its containment system, she explained, carefully extracting the luminescent object. It pulsed in her palm, reminding Marcus of her freckles. The rest is environmental support and security measures. Marcus stared at the tiny, innocuous-looking thing. That's what everyone's trying to kill us for? Size is not always indicative of power. Captain, Saris replied, securing the sample in a pouch at her belt. Now, shall we depart? The maintenance shaft was painfully narrow, forcing them to crawl on elbows and knees. Marcus led the way, using the ship's schematics stored in his neural implant to navigate the labyrinthine passages. Behind them, sounds of pursuit faded as their hunters were forced to find alternate routes. Left here, Marcus directed, wincing as his injured shoulder scraped against the metal wall. Despite Ceres's healing touch, the wound was far from fully healed. They emerged in a seldom-used storage room, one level above the escape pod bay. From here, they would need to use the main corridors. There were no maintenance shafts leading directly to the pods. "Stay close," Marcus whispered, checking the corridor before stepping out. They moved as quickly as stealth would allow, freezing at every sound. The Nightjar's damage systems worked in their favor, with intermittent power failures plunging sections into darkness that concealed their movement. They were halfway to the pod bay when disaster struck. Rounding a corner, they came face to face with a Kasabian pirate, the cybernetic-eyed leader himself, flanked by two of his crew. "Well, look what we have here." The pirate grinned, raising his weapon. "The captain and the alien, out for a stroll. Hand over the sample, and maybe I'll let your crew live." Marcus tensed, calculating the distance to the nearest cover. Too far. They'd be shot before they made it halfway. "The sample is not for you," Ceres stated calmly. "Your limited understanding would lead only to catastrophe." The pirate's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on her. "Pretty words from a pretty alien, but I've got buyers who understand it just fine. Enough to pay me a fortune." "Last chance," Marcus warned, though he knew the threat was empty. "Walk away, and everyone lives." The pirate laughed. "Brave talk from a man seconds from death. Shoot them both. We'll take the sample from the corpse." Time seemed to slow as the pirates raised their weapons. Marcus moved on instinct, throwing himself in front of Ceres as energy bolts lanced toward them. He felt a searing impact in his chest, the sensation of falling, the cold deck against his cheek. Through a haze of pain, he was vaguely aware of movement, of Ceres doing something. There were flashes of light, cries of alarm, then silence. He tried to rise but found his body unresponsive, a spreading numbness replacing the initial agony. "Marcus." Ceres's face appeared above him, her features tight with concern. "Stay with me, Captain." He tried to speak but managed only a wet cough, tasting copper. "Not good." "You took a lethal shot," she told him, her hands moving to his chest. "The damage is extensive." "Crew," he managed to gasp. "Get to crew. Leave me." "No." The word held such finality that he found himself unable to argue. "I will not abandon you, Marcus Rain. Not when there is another way." She glanced up, seeming to calculate something. "The bio-lunar alignment. It's not ideal, but it will suffice." With surprising strength, she lifted him, carrying him toward a nearby observation port. Outside, Korath V's largest moon was rising over the horizon, bathing the corridor in pale blue light. Ceres positioned him in the moonlight, then began removing his blood-soaked shirt. Her movements were methodical, yet gentle, her expression one of intense concentration. "What are you doing?" he asked, each word a struggle. "A ritual of my people," she replied, now removing her own outer garment to reveal skin covered in intricate patterns of bioluminescent markings, similar to the freckles on her face, but far more complex. "The Salandris bond we share? It can be strengthened, used to heal even mortal wounds, but it requires consent." Marcus could feel his consciousness fading, the edges of his vision darkening. "If it involves more licking, I consent." Despite the gravity of the situation, Ceres's lips curved slightly. "Your humor remains intact. That is promising." Her expression sobered. "But you must understand, This is not a temporary connection. The ritual will bind us in ways that cannot be undone. Your essence and mine will be permanently intertwined. The implications should have terrified him. Instead, Marcus felt an inexplicable sense of rightness, as if some part of him had been waiting for this moment without knowing it. "Do it," he whispered. Saris nodded, then placed her hands on his bare chest, directly over the wound. The touch should have been agonizing, but instead, it brought a welcome warmth. She began to speak in her native tongue, words that Marcus couldn't understand but somehow felt he should. The moonlight seemed to intensify, focusing on them like a spotlight. Saris's markings began to glow brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her words, beneath her hands. Marcus felt a strange sensation, not healing, exactly, but a restructuring, as if his very cells were being rewritten. Images flooded his mind, not the vague impressions he'd experienced before, but vivid scenes from a life not his own. Saris as a child, training among the Guardians. The weight of responsibility as she took her vows. The fear and determination when she was assigned to protect the Genesis sample. And beneath it all, a growing awareness of him, a connection that transcended physical space. The ritual reached its crescendo as Saris pressed her forehead to his, their breath mingling. A surge of energy passed between them, so powerful that Marcus would have cried out if he'd had the strength. Then, abruptly, the pain was gone. He gasped, drawing a full breath for the first time since being shot. Looking down, he saw his wound closing before his eyes, new skin forming over what should have been a lethal injury. But the physical healing was only part of the transformation. In his mind, he felt a new presence, Saris, connected to him in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. And with that connection came power, a wellspring of energy that seemed to flow through his entire being. "What did you do to me?" he asked, his voice stronger now. Saris sat back, her markings still glowing but less intensely. "I made you my catalyst," she said simply. In the old tongue, my Valkai, my chosen partner. Before Marcus could respond, the ship shuddered around them. A distant explosion echoed through the corridors, followed by the ominous sound of tearing metal. The fight must have reached the engine core, Marcus realized, pushing himself to his feet. He should have been weak, dizzy at the very least. Instead, he felt stronger than he had in years. If they breach the containment field, the ship will be destroyed, Saris finished. We must reach the escape pod. They ran, no longer bothering with stealth. Marcus led the way, somehow knowing exactly which turns to take. Another effect of the bond, he assumed. They encountered no resistance. The remaining pirates and corporate forces were likely too busy trying to save themselves to worry about pursuit. They reached the escape pod bay to find Wrench, Rico, and Soren waiting anxiously by an open pod hatch. "Captain," Rico exclaimed as they appeared. "We were about to come looking for you." "No time," Marcus urged them toward the pod. "Ship's going critical. Everyone in, now." They crowded into the escape pod, designed for 6 but uncomfortable with 5. Soren took the pilot's seat automatically, his fingers dancing across the controls. "Launch mechanism still compromised," he reported. "Manual override required. Someone has to stay behind to trigger it," Wrench realized, already starting to rise. "No," Marcus stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. "I'll do it." "Captain!" "That's an order," he said firmly. "Get ready for launch." As the crew reluctantly prepared, Marcus turned to Saris. "You should go with them. Get the sample to safety." Her luminescent eyes fixed on his. "You know I cannot leave you, Valkai. Not now." Of course, the bond. She had literally tied her life force to his. If he died, she might as well. "Then we do this together," he decided. "Wrench, you're in charge until we rendezvous at the colony. Look after them." The mechanic nodded, tears in her eyes. "Aye, Captain. Don't keep us waiting too long." Marcus sealed the escape pod hatch, then moved with Saris to the manual launch controls. As they worked to bypass the damaged systems, the ship shuddered more violently, warning lights flashing throughout the bay. "Engine core breach imminent," the ship's automated voice announced. "All personnel evacuate immediately." "Almost got it," Marcus muttered, connecting the final bypass circuit. "There!" The escape pod's thrusters ignited, propelling it away from the doomed nightjar. Through the observation port, Marcus watched it shrink into the distance, carrying his crew to safety. "Now what?" he asked, turning to Saris. "We've got about 3 minutes before this ship becomes a very expensive firework." "There is another pod." She pointed to the emergency captain's pod, smaller, but functional. "Your ship planned for your survival, Captain." They sprinted to the secondary pod bay, the ship breaking apart around them. Reaching the pod, Marcus quickly initiated the launch sequence, while Saris secured the hatch. "Brace yourself," he warned as the pod released, the sudden acceleration pressing them back into their seats. Behind them, the Nightjar's engine core finally breached, the explosion expanding in a spectacular sphere of energy that buffeted their small craft, sending it tumbling through space. Soren would have recovered control instantly. Marcus, despite his newfound abilities, struggled with the unfamiliar controls. "Allow me," Saris said, reaching past him to adjust the stabilizers. The pod gradually stopped spinning, leaving them with a clear view of Korath V below. "You can fly?" Marcus asked, surprised. "The Guardians are trained in many skills," she replied. "And I can access some of your knowledge through our bond. Your experience as a pilot is quite extensive." Marcus leaned back, processing this new information. "So this bond, it goes both ways? I can access your knowledge too?" "In theory, yes. Though it may take time for you to develop the necessary mental discipline." She guided the pod toward the colony's coordinates. "For now, it manifests primarily as enhanced physical capabilities and accelerated healing." "And the other stuff? The visions? The connection I feel to your world?" Saris's expression softened. "That is more complex. The Salandris bond creates a shared destiny between us. Your glimpses of my homeworld are not merely visions but possibilities, paths our joined lives might take." The pod entered Korath V's atmosphere, the hull heating as they descended toward the mining colony. In the distance, they could see the larger escape pod had already landed, a small group of figures, presumably their crew, moving toward the settlement. "You knew this would happen," Marcus realized suddenly. "Not the attack or the ship's destruction, but us, the bond. You knew from the moment you licked my wound that I was compatible." Saris did not deny it. "I sensed potential. Yes. But potential does not guarantee outcome. You chose to protect me, to help safeguard the sample, to sacrifice yourself. Each choice strengthened the possibility of the bond." As they prepared for landing, Marcus found himself neither angry nor resentful of this revelation. Instead, he felt strangely at peace, as if he'd been searching for something his entire life without knowing what it was. Until now. The pod touched down on the outskirts of the colony, its landing struts absorbing most of the impact. As the hatch hissed open, Marcus turned to Saris. "So what now, Guardian? Where do we go from here?" She smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed her alien features into something breathtakingly beautiful. "Now, Valkai, we fulfill our purpose. We protect the Genesis sample, and with it, the future of countless worlds." "Sounds like a big job for a cargo hauler and an alien medic," he remarked, but returned her smile with one of his own. "Perhaps," she agreed, as they stepped onto the dusty surface of Korath V. "But together, I believe we are equal to the task." Above them, the last remnants of the nightjar burned through the atmosphere like falling stars, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As they walked toward the settlement, Marcus felt the weight of the Genesis sample in Ceres's pouch and the new power humming through his veins. Whatever came next, they would face it as what they had become: partners, guardians, catalysts for change in a universe that suddenly seemed full of possibilities. The mining colony of Korath had seen better days. Once a bustling frontier outpost, it now clung to existence through maintenance contracts and the occasional shipment of low-grade ore. Perfect for those looking to disappear. Marcus and Ceres reunited with the crew at a dilapidated cantina near the colony's central dome. The place reeked of synthetic alcohol and unwashed miners. But no one looked twice at strangers, a valuable commodity in their situation. "Captain," Wrench waved them over to a booth in the back. "Thought you might have gone up with the ship." "Nearly did," Marcus replied, sliding onto the bench beside Rico. "Good to see you all made it in one piece." "Your chest," Rico noticed, eyes widening. "You were hit. I saw the blast mark on your shirt." Marcus exchanged glances with Ceres, who had taken a seat at the end of the table. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicate it," Wrench demanded. "You were dying last we saw. Now you're walking around like nothing happened." "The Guardian performed a healing ritual," Marcus explained, keeping his voice low. "Ancient alien medicine. Very effective." Soren's perpetually narrowed eyes shifted from Marcus to Ceres and back again. "Changed you," he observed simply. "Not just healing. Trust Soren to see what others missed." The man might barely speak, but he noticed everything. "Yes," Marcus admitted. "The ritual created a bond between us. It's given me some enhancements." "What kind of enhancements?" Wrench asked suspiciously. In answer, Marcus picked up a metal spoon from the table and, with minimal effort, bent it nearly double. He had discovered this newfound strength on the walk to the settlement, accidentally crushing the pod's handhold when a sudden noise startled him. "Holy shit," Rico breathed. "You're like those enhanced corporate soldiers now?" "Not exactly," Ceres interjected. "The bond grants access to energies my people have cultivated for millennia. Strength is merely the most obvious manifestation." "And there are others?" Wrench pressed. Marcus nodded. "Accelerated healing, heightened senses, and something else. Something I can't quite define yet. Like a new awareness." "Psionic potential," Ceres explained. "It will develop with time and training." The crew fell silent, processing this information. Finally, Wrench spoke. "So, what's the plan, Captain? We've got no ship, limited credits, and half the frontier probably looking for us." It was the question Marcus had been asking himself since they landed. The nightjar was gone, along with nearly everything they owned. Their chances of securing another vessel without drawing attention were slim. And even if they managed it, where would they go? Helicorp would assume they had betrayed the contract. Biosite wanted the Genesis sample. The Kasabians wanted revenge. There were precious few safe harbors left in the frontier. "We need to get the sample to Aurora Amshi," Ceres said, answering the unspoken question. "There is a Guardian outpost hidden beneath the surface. They can secure it properly." "Aurora Sheath was our original destination anyway," Marcus pointed out. "But getting there won't be easy. It's at least 3 standard jumps from here, and we have no ship." "I might have a solution," Rico spoke up. "While you two were doing your death-defying escape, I made contact with some old associates. There's a resistance cell operating on Korath, people fighting against corporate dominance of the frontier. They might be willing to help, especially if it means sticking it to Biosite." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You never mentioned resistance connections before." Rico shrugged. "Never came up. Besides, a navigator meets all sorts of people. You'd be surprised how many have grudges against the corporations." "Can you arrange a meeting?" Marcus asked. "Already did. They're expecting us at Warehouse 17 in 2 hours." Marcus nodded, impressed by his navigator's initiative. Good work. In the meantime, we should gather whatever supplies we can. Wrench, see if you can acquire some basic weapons. Nothing flashy, just enough for protection. Soren, we need transportation to the warehouse district. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Marcus and Saris remained at the table, the ambient noise of the cantina providing cover for their conversation. Your crew adapts quickly, Saris observed. They trust your leadership, even in crisis. We've been through a lot together, Marcus replied. When you haul cargo on the frontier long enough, you learn to roll with the punches. Saris studied him, her luminescent eyes seeming to peer into his soul, which, given their bond, might not be far from the truth. You are troubled, Valkai, not about our immediate circumstances, but something deeper. Marcus sighed. She was right, of course. I'm trying to reconcile what I was with what I've become. Yesterday, I was just a cargo hauler trying to make ends meet. Today, I'm... what exactly? Part alien? A guardian by proxy? I'm not sure I'm cut out for protecting the future of countless worlds. Few are prepared for destiny when it finds them, Saris said softly. But the bond would not have formed if you were not capable. That's just it. Marcus leaned forward, voice low but intense. I'm not sure I believe in destiny. I've always made my own way, chosen my own path. This feels like I've been drafted into a war I didn't sign up for. Saris considered his words carefully. Perhaps it is not destiny, but compatibility. The universe is full of patterns seeking completion. Sometimes, two beings align in ways that create something greater than either alone. Poetic, Marcus remarked with a half-smile. But it doesn't change the fact that my life has been completely upended. Would you undo it if you could? She asked, her freckles pulsing with what he now recognized as uncertainty. The bond can be severed, though the process is painful. The question gave Marcus pause. Would he? Despite the complications, despite the danger and uncertainty, the thought of breaking the connection filled him with an inexplicable sense of loss. No, he admitted finally. I wouldn't undo it, but I would like to understand it better, to know what I'm getting into. Saris's expression softened. That is fair. When we reach safety, I will teach you everything I can about the Salandris and what it means to be Valkai. Their conversation was interrupted by Wrench's return. The mechanic slid into the booth, placing a small bundle on the table between them. Best I could do on short notice, she explained, unwrapping the cloth to reveal 3 compact energy pistols. Standard mining-grade stunners, modified for increased output. Won't stop a corporate tactical team, but they'll give most troublemakers pause. Marcus examined one of the weapons, noting the crude but effective modifications. Nice work. Any trouble acquiring them? Nothing a few credits and my charming personality couldn't handle, Wrench replied with a grin. Also, picked up some interesting gossip. Seems we weren't the only ones who had a run-in with Biosite recently. There's been increased corporate activity all through this sector, ships searching for something. The Genesis sample, Saris concluded. Word of its value must have spread. Which means we need to move quickly, Marcus decided, securing one of the pistols in his jacket. As soon as Rico and Soren return, we head for the meeting. Warehouse 17 turned out to be an abandoned ore processing facility on the colony's eastern edge. Its massive doors had long since been sealed. But Rico led them to a smaller access point hidden behind piles of discarded equipment. Remember, Marcus cautioned as they approached. We don't know these people. Stay alert, keep your hands visible, and let me do the talking. The access door opened at Rico's knock, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. A figure motioned them inside, then quickly resealed the entrance behind them. Nav, the figure greeted Rico with a nod. These the ones you mentioned? They are, Rico confirmed. This is Captain Rain and his crew, and Saris, their specialist, their guide, a wiry woman with a network of faint scars across her face, gave them an appraising look. Follow me. Council's waiting. She led them through a maze of processing equipment to what had once been the facility's control center. Now, it served as the Resistance Cell's headquarters, with makeshift workstations, communications equipment, and a large central table covered in maps and data pads. Around the table stood three individuals. An older man with a cybernetic eye, similar to the Kasabian leaders, but more sophisticated. A hulking figure whose species Marcus couldn't immediately identify, with gray, stone-like skin, and a human woman whose military bearings suggested formal training. Captain Marcus Rain, the older man greeted him. I'm Commander Dex. My associates are Krell and Captain Frost. We understand you've had a disagreement with Biosite. Marcus stepped forward. You could say that. They destroyed my ship trying to get their hands on something we were transporting. Something valuable enough to send a tactical team to a backwater like Korath V, Dex noted. That makes you either very unfortunate or very interesting. Both, Marcus admitted. We're carrying something Biosite wants badly. Something that could be devastating in the wrong hands. Dex and his companions exchanged glances. And you came to us because... We need transportation to Aurora Ensign, Marcus explained. Secure, discreet transportation. The stone-skinned being, Krell, spoke, his voice surprisingly melodic for his imposing appearance. Aurora Smains is deep in corporate territory. Not an easy destination, especially for fugitives. We're aware of the risks, Marcus replied. But it's the only place where what we're carrying can be properly secured. Captain Frost leaned forward, her sharp eyes studying them. And what exactly are you carrying that's worth all this trouble? Marcus hesitated, looking to Saris. It was her secret to share or keep. Saris stepped forward, her posture radiating a quiet authority that even the Resistance leaders seemed to recognize. A Genesis matrix, biotechnology capable of rewriting ecosystems on a planetary scale. In the right hands, it could restore dead worlds to life. In the wrong hands, a weapon of unimaginable power, Dex finished, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on her. The corporations have been pursuing such technology for decades. And you're one of the Guardians. Frost identified Saris immediately. The blue skin, the bioluminescence, stories of your kind have reached even this far into the frontier. I am, Saris acknowledged. The Genesis Matrix was entrusted to my protection. I must return it to my people at the Aurora Ekans outpost. The Resistance leaders conferred quietly among themselves, occasionally glancing at Marcus and his crew. Finally, Dex addressed them again. Normally, we wouldn't involve ourselves in such a high-risk operation. Our fight is here, on the frontier, protecting colonies like Korath V from corporate exploitation. He paused. However, the thought of Biosite possessing a Genesis matrix is concerning. We will help you reach Aurora Ekans. What's the catch? Wrench asked, always the pragmatist. Krell's stone lips curved in what might have been a smile. The catch, as you say, is that we cannot provide direct transportation to Aurora Ekans. Corporate patrols are too heavy, and our vessels are known to their security forces. But, Frost continued, we can get you to the Vale Nebula trading post. From there, you can secure passage on a corporate supply ship. They run regular routes to all major worlds, including Aurora Ekans. Infiltrating a corporate vessel. Marcus considered the plan. Risky, but doable with the right identities and documentation. Which we can provide, Dex assured him. For a price. Name it, Marcus said, though his credit reserves were dangerously low after purchasing the weapons. Information, Dex replied. Specifically, the location of all Biosite patrols and security checkpoints you encounter between here and Aurora Ekans. Such intelligence would be invaluable to our operations. It was a reasonable request. Far more reasonable than Marcus had expected. Agreed. When do we leave? Dawn, Frost answered. Our ship is hidden in an abandoned mining shaft on the colony's perimeter. Less chance of being observed departing during the morning shift change. As arrangements were finalized, Marcus found himself watching Saris. She stood slightly apart from the others, her attention focused on a star chart of the Aurora system. Through their bond, he sensed not just her determination, but also a growing unease. Moving to her side, he spoke quietly. Something wrong? Perhaps, she replied, her voice equally low. The journey to Aurora Ifenth will take us dangerously close to Biosite's primary research facility, ARCS 1. That doesn't sound like a coincidence. It is not, Saris confirmed. ARCS 1 was built specifically to study and weaponize technologies like the Genesis Matrix. If they detect us passing so near, they'll throw everything they have at us, Marcus finished. Can we go another way? There are alternative routes, but they would add days to our journey. Time we may not have. She indicated a section of the star chart. The sample must be stabilized within a specific facility. The longer it remains active, the more unstable it becomes. And if it destabilizes? Saris's freckles pulsed with concern. The results would be unpredictable. At minimum, a localized bioenergetic cascade. At worst. Let me guess, Big Boom? A crude but accurate assessment, she acknowledged. Though boom does not quite capture the reality of space-time distortion, Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a habit when confronted with problems that seemed to have no good solutions. So we're racing against time, pursued by corporations and pirates, carrying an unstable superweapon, and our escape route takes us right past the enemy's front door. Yes. Despite everything, he found himself smiling. Just another day on the frontier, then... Saris tilted her head, studying his expression. You find humor in our predicament? If I didn't, I'd probably be curled up in a corner somewhere, Marcus admitted. Sometimes, laughter is the only sane response to an insane situation. Through their bond, he felt her comprehension, not just intellectual understanding, but emotional resonance. It was a strange sensation, this sharing of perspective that transcended words. Your adaptability continues to impress me. Valkai, she said softly. Perhaps that is why the bond formed so readily between us. Before he could respond, Dex approached with a data crystal. Your new identities, he explained, handing it to Marcus. Corporate maintenance contractors returning from an assignment on Korath V. Not glamorous, but maintenance crews have access to most areas of supply ships without raising suspicion. Thank you. Marcus pocketed the crystal. We'll make good use of them. As Dex moved away, Marcus turned back to Saris. We should get some rest before dawn. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Indeed, she agreed. Though I must monitor the sample through the night, its containment requires periodic adjustment. Then I'll stay with you, he decided. At her questioning look, he added, The bond. I can feel when you're doing whatever it is you do with the sample. It's distracting, especially when I'm trying to sleep. Might as well be useful. It wasn't entirely true. He was learning to compartmentalize the sensations from their bond, but the prospect of leaving her alone with the weight of her responsibility seemed wrong somehow. Saris's freckles pulsed with what he was beginning to recognize as gratitude. Your company would be welcome. They found a quiet corner of the warehouse where Saris could work undisturbed. As she removed the Genesis Matrix from its makeshift containment, the pouch at her belt, Marcus was struck again by how something so small could be so significant. In the dim light, the Matrix glowed with shifting patterns of energy, its surface seemingly both solid and liquid simultaneously. Saris held it between her palms, her own bioluminescence resonating with its pulsations. "It's beautiful," Marcus observed, watching the play of light. "Hard to believe something so lovely could be so dangerous." "Many dangerous things are beautiful," Saris replied, her eyes half closed in concentration. "The matrix reflects the fundamental patterns of life itself, the code upon which all biological existence is written." As she worked, adjusting the matrix's energy signature through some process, Marcus couldn't begin to comprehend. He felt the bond between them strengthening. Images flickered through his mind, glimpses of her world, of ancient guardian temples where similar matrices were studied and preserved, of ceremonies connecting life forces across vast distances. "The matrix responds to your presence," Saris noted, without opening her eyes. "It senses the bond between us." "Is that good or bad?" Marcus asked, watching as the matrix's glow intensified slightly when he leaned closer. "Unusual, but not concerning. The Genesis technology is designed to respond to guardian catalysts. Through our bond, it recognizes elements of my genetic signature in you." Marcus contemplated this. "So I'm what, half guardian now?" "No." Saris opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "You are still human, but enhanced. The bond has activated latent potentials that exist in all sentient beings, but rarely manifest. These potentials, the strength, the healing, they're permanent." "Yes," she confirmed, "and they will likely develop further as the bond matures." The implications were staggering. Marcus had never sought power or enhancement. He'd been content with his life as a frontier hauler. Now he found himself irrevocably changed, carrying abilities that many in the corporate world would kill to possess. "You're worried," Saris observed, sensing his disquiet through their connection. "Just thinking about the future," he admitted. "Assuming we survive this mission, what then? I can't exactly go back to hauling cargo, can I?" "That would be difficult," she agreed. "The corporations would never stop hunting someone with your unique modifications. And the bond between us makes separation problematic." "Problematic how?" Saris carefully returned the matrix to its pouch before answering. "Extended physical distance weakens the bond. Past certain thresholds, the separation becomes painful, eventually fatal." "So we're tethered together for life." Marcus processed this new information. "That's quite a commitment for two people who met a few days ago." "I am sorry," she said softly, genuine regret flowing through their connection. "Had there been any other way to save your life?" "Hey," he interrupted, reaching out to touch her arm. "I'm not blaming you. You saved me when you could have left me behind. I made my choice when I consented to the ritual." The touch sent a cascade of sensations through their bond. Her relief, her concern, and something deeper that neither of them seemed ready to examine too closely. "Rest now," Marcus suggested, withdrawing his hand. "I'll keep watch." Saris nodded, settling into a meditative posture. "Wake me if anything changes with the Matrix. Its containment should hold through the night, but caution is warranted." As she slipped into her species' version of sleep, a trance-like state with eyes partially open, Marcus found himself studying her features. The alien beauty of her was becoming less foreign to him with each passing hour. Perhaps another effect of their bond. The night passed quietly, punctuated only by the distant sounds of the colony and the occasional movement of resistance members going about their duties. Marcus dozed intermittently, always keeping one eye on Saris and the precious cargo she guarded. Dawn on Korath Phi was less a brightening than a shifting of gray tones, as the perpetual industrial haze caught the first rays of the system's dim star. The resistance crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for departure while maintaining the appearance of normal mining operations. Marcus roused his crew, who had been provided with sleeping quarters elsewhere in the warehouse. They gathered their meager belongings and the new identities provided by the resistance. Maintenance contractors. Wrench read from her datapad with distaste. Couldn't they have made us corporate executives or something with better quarters? Executives get scrutinized. Rico pointed out. Maintenance gets ignored. Trust me, this is better. Captain Frost arrived to escort them to the hidden ship. Final preparations are complete. We depart in 20 minutes. Any last needs? We're good, Marcus assured her, though in truth they were woefully underprepared for what lay ahead. Their weapons were inadequate, their disguises untested, and they carried one of the most valuable and dangerous objects in the galaxy. But dwelling on these facts wouldn't improve their situation. The journey to the abandoned mining shaft took them through service tunnels beneath the colony, avoiding the more populated areas where corporate surveillance might be active. The Resistance moved with the confidence of long practice, suggesting they'd used these routes many times before. Here we are, Frost announced, as they emerged into a vast cavern. Home sweet home. The ship berthed before them wasn't what Marcus had expected. Rather than some cobbled-together Resistance vessel, it was a sleek corporate shuttle, the kind used by mid-level executives for system travel. Liberated from Biosite 3 months ago, Frost explained, noting his surprise. They reported it destroyed in a mining accident. We've made some modifications to the transponder and weapons systems, but it still passes as corporate at casual inspection. Impressive, Marcus acknowledged. Your Resistance is better equipped than most. We've been fighting the corporate expansion for 15 years, Frost replied. You learn a few tricks along the way. Boarding proceeded quickly, the Resistance crew efficient despite the cramped conditions. The shuttle was designed for 12 passengers and 2 crew, but they were squeezing in 18 for this journey. The Resistance team, Marcus's crew, and Saris. Departure in 5 minutes, the pilot announced. All passengers secure yourselves for vacuum transition. Marcus found a seat next to Saris, who had positioned herself away from the main group. Through their bond, he sensed her discomfort at the confined space and the proximity of so many unfamiliar beings. You okay? He asked quietly. My species evolved in open spaces, she explained. Enclosed environments with multiple life forms can be overwhelming to our senses. Focus on me, he suggested, acting on instinct. Use our bond as an anchor. She gave him a grateful look, then closed her eyes, her breathing slowing as she concentrated. Marcus felt a subtle shift in their connection, a deepening, as if channels previously unused were now opening between them. The shuttle shuddered as the mining shaft's concealed doors parted above them. With a surge of power, they lifted off, ascending rapidly through the artificial tunnel toward the surface. Exiting Korath V atmosphere in 30 seconds, the pilot reported. No pursuit detected. A collective exhale seemed to pass through the cabin. The first hurdle cleared without incident. Setting course for the Vale Nebula, the co-pilot added. ETA 14 hours at standard speed. 14 hours in cramped quarters with a diverse group of Resistance fighters. A crew still processing recent events, and an alien guardian carrying a potentially unstable Genesis matrix. Marcus settled in for what promised to be an interesting journey. The first few hours passed uneventfully. The Resistance members kept to themselves, occasionally conferring in low voices over datapads and star charts. Marcus's crew tried to rest, though the tension in the cabin made true relaxation impossible. It was during the 6th hour that the first complication arose. Captain, the pilot called from the cockpit. We're picking up an anomalous reading at the edge of our sensor range. Configuration suggests a biosite patrol vessel. Marcus moved forward to examine the sensor display. Have they spotted us? Uncertain. They're running active scans, but we're still at extreme range. Our modified transponder should identify us as a routine maintenance shuttle. Should, Marcus noted grimly. Maintain course, but be prepared to divert if they show interest. He returned to his seat, updating Saris in a whisper. Her freckles pulsed with concern, but she remained outwardly calm. The Matrix's energy signature is minimal, she assured him. But if their sensors are specifically calibrated to detect bioenergetic patterns, the unspoken conclusion hung between them. If BioSite had indeed been searching specifically for the Genesis sample, standard corporate sensors might have been upgraded for that purpose. An hour passed in tense silence, the patrol vessel maintaining its distance but not changing course. Then, abruptly, the pilot called out, "They're altering vector. Intercept course. They'll be within hailing range in 20 minutes. Options? Marcus asked, returning to the cockpit. Frost joined them, her military training evident in her crisp assessment. We can't outrun a patrol ship, and our weapons would only damage, not disable it. Our best chance is to maintain our cover identity and hope their inspection is cursory. And if it isn't, Wrench asked from behind them. Then we fight, Krell stated simply, revealing a concealed compartment containing an impressive array of weapons far more powerful than the modified mining tools Marcus's crew carried. Fighting should be our last resort, Marcus cautioned. A destroyed patrol ship will bring the entire BioSite fleet down on this region. What about the nebula? Rico suggested, studying the navigation display. If we can reach the outer gas clouds, their sensors would be compromised. We might lose them in the interference. The pilot calculated rapidly. At maximum thrust, we could reach the nebula's edge before they intercept. But it would be obvious we're running. Not necessarily. Sarah spoke up, joining the discussion. The Genesis matrix reacts to nebula gases. It's how it forms initial environmental assessments. We could claim we're on a priority mission to collect nebula samples for terraforming research. Marcus nodded. Corporate greed is always a believable motivation. They'd accept that a terraforming breakthrough would take priority over responding to a routine patrol hail. It might work, Frost agreed cautiously. Divert course to the nebula, Marcus decided. Maximum thrust. Prepare a transmission explaining our urgent research mission, if they hail us. The shuttle banked sharply, its engines straining as they accelerated toward the distant clouds of the Veil Nebula. On the sensor display, the patrol ship adjusted course to match their new vector. They're pursuing, the pilot reported, and gaining. Their engines are military grade. Time to nebula edge? 18 minutes at current speed. They'll be in weapons range in 15. Marcus exchanged glances with Frost. I don't suppose this shuttle has any defensive capabilities. Basic shield generators and a point defense system designed to clear micrometeorites, she replied. Nothing that would stop a military vessel. Incoming transmission, the co-pilot announced. They're ordering us to reduce speed and prepare for boarding. Ignore it for now, Marcus instructed. Let them think we're too focused on our critical mission to bother with a patrol ship. The next 15 minutes were among the longest of Marcus's life. The patrol ship closed steadily, eventually moving into optimal firing position. Still, they held course for the nebula, now visible as a vast, shimmering curtain of luminescent gas. They're charging weapons, the pilot reported tensely. 10 seconds to firing range. Prepare to broadcast our cover story, Marcus ordered. Make it sound urgent but corporate, like jobs depend on reaching those gases. The co-pilot nodded, fingers poised over the communications array. 5 seconds. 4, 3. Wait, Saris interrupted, her eyes wide. Something's happening. Through their bond, Marcus felt it too, a sudden surge of energy from the Genesis matrix, as if it were responding to the proximity of the nebula, even at this distance. The matrix, she explained hurriedly. It's activating autonomously, drawn to the nebula's bioenergetic potential. If the patrol ship scans us now, they'll detect it immediately, Marcus finished. Can you suppress it? I'm trying. She placed a hand over the pouch containing the sample. But its programming is asserting itself. It perceives the nebula as a viable terraforming environment. The patrol ship was now directly behind them, its weapons fully charged and targeting systems locked. Final warning received, the co-pilot reported. They're demanding immediate compliance. Marcus made a split-second decision. Broadcast this. Biosite Patrol. This is Research Shuttle Delta 9. We are on priority assignment from Director Vega herself, collecting time-sensitive samples from the Veil. Our comms officer was indisposed. Apologies for the delay in responding. Please verify our clearance with Central Command. Authorization code Helix 7 Tango 3. The co-pilot transmitted the message, adding just the right note of corporate irritation to make it convincing. Long seconds passed as they waited for a response. The patrol ship maintained its position, weapons still charged, but not firing. They're checking the authorization code, Frost guessed. Good thinking. Standard corporate bureaucracy, Marcus explained. Drop enough specific names and codes, and underlings hesitate. Nobody wants to be the one who interfered with a director's pet project. They're responding, the co-pilot announced. Research Shuttle Delta 9. Your authorization code is being processed. Maintain current course and speed. Be advised. We are detecting unusual energy signatures from your vessel. Explain. Marcus nodded to the co-pilot. Tell them. That's precisely why we're in such a hurry. The prototype atmospheric catalyst we're transporting is unstable in proximity to certain nebula gases. Hence our urgency to reach the collection point before degradation occurs. Director Vega authorized this mission personally, despite the risks. I'm sure she'll be interested to hear why it was delayed. The message was transmitted, the implied threat to involve a high-ranking director clear, but not overstated. Another tense wait followed. The patrol ship remained in pursuit position, but its weapons powered down slightly, not standing down completely, but no longer at immediate firing readiness. Research Shuttle Delta 9. You are cleared to proceed. Be advised. Your vessel will be logged for inspection upon return to corporate space. Patrol ship vigilance out. A collective sigh of relief filled the cabin as the patrol ship began to veer away, resuming its original course. That was too close, Wrench muttered. Quick thinking, Captain. Indeed, Frost agreed, looking at Marcus with newfound respect. You know corporate protocols well. Spent years avoiding them, he replied. You learn how they think. Marcus turned to Saris, who was still concentrating on containing the Matrix's energy signature. How's our passenger? Stabilizing, she reported. But we should be cautious as we approach the nebula. Its reaction was stronger than anticipated. Pilot, reduce speed as we near the outer gas boundary, Marcus instructed. Give our Guardian time to manage the sample. As the shuttle slowed, approaching the shimmering curtain of the Veil Nebula more cautiously, Marcus noticed Soren watching him intently from across the cabin. Something on your mind? He asked the taciturn pilot. Soren considered for a moment before speaking. Different. Different how? Your decisions. Before, you ran. Now, you face. Soren nodded slightly, as if confirming something to himself. Better. Coming from Soren, this constituted a speech of epic proportions and high praise. Marcus wasn't sure how to respond, so he simply nodded in acknowledgement. The shuttle penetrated the outer layers of the nebula, the viewports filling with swirling currents of luminescent gases in shades of purple, blue, and green. The navigation system switched to enhanced modes, conventional sensors being largely useless in the dense particulate environment. The trading post is located in a relatively stable pocket near the center of this section, the pilot explained. ETA 3 hours at current speed. Marcus returned to Saris's side, noting the strain evident in her posture. The Matrix still giving you trouble? It is. Eager, she replied, choosing her words carefully. The nebula contains elements ideal for Genesis processes. The Matrix wants to begin a terraforming sequence. Can it do that from inside its containment? No, but its attempts to activate are draining my energy to suppress, she explained. I may require assistance before we reach the trading post. What kind of assistance? The bond between us, she said. It allows for energy transfer. If you were willing, you could help stabilize the matrix through our connection. Marcus hesitated only briefly. Tell me what to do. Under Saris's guidance, Marcus placed his hand over hers, where it rested on the pouch containing the Genesis sample. Closing his eyes, he concentrated on the sensation of their bond, the invisible tether connecting their life forces. At first, nothing happened. Then, gradually, he became aware of a new dimension to their connection, a flow of energy passing from him to Saris, and through her to the Matrix. It wasn't painful, exactly, but it left him feeling slightly lightheaded, as if he'd stood up too quickly. That's it, Saris encouraged him. You're doing well, Valkai. The process continued for several minutes, the drain on Marcus's energy steady but manageable. Through the bond, he could sense the Matrix's response, a gradual calming, like a restless creature soothed by a gentle hand. When Saris finally broke the connection, Marcus blinked, readjusting to his surroundings. The other passengers were studiously avoiding looking in their direction, granting them an illusion of privacy in the cramped shuttle. Thank you, Saris said softly. The Matrix is stable now. It has adapted to the nebula's presence. Happy to help, Marcus replied, surprised to find he meant it. Despite the strangeness of the situation, there was something undeniably satisfying about the energy transfer, a feeling of purpose he hadn't experienced in years of hauling cargo. As the shuttle continued its journey deeper into the nebula, Marcus found himself contemplating the rapid changes in his life. A week ago, his greatest concern had been securing enough contracts to keep the Nightjar flying for another quarter. Now, he was bonded to an alien guardian, carrying abilities no human should possess, and responsible for delivering a technology that could reshape worlds. The strangest part? It felt right somehow, as if he'd been moving toward this destiny all along without knowing it. Destiny. There was that word again, a concept he'd rejected all his life, preferring to believe in choice and chance rather than predetermined paths. Yet, here he was, irrevocably linked to Saris and her mission, following a course that seemed to have been set long before they met. Maybe, he mused, watching the nebula gases swirl hypnotically outside the viewport. Destiny and choice weren't mutually exclusive. Perhaps destiny simply meant being in the right place at the right time to make the choices that defined you. The Vale Nebula trading post appeared suddenly through the colorful gases, a sprawling collection of interconnected habitats, docking structures, and storage facilities anchored to a massive asteroid. Originally established as a refueling station for mining operations within the nebula, it had evolved into a thriving commerce center where corporate regulations were treated more as suggestions than laws. Quite the hive of scum and villainy, Wrench remarked as they approached. Which makes it perfect for our purposes, Frost pointed out. Corporate presence here is minimal, mostly observers reporting back to their respective companies, rather than enforcement. The shuttle docked at an unremarkable berth on the station's outer ring, paying the exorbitant fee without complaint, standard procedure for vessels wanting to avoid unnecessary attention. The Resistance has contacts here who can help secure your passage to Aurora Irpind, Dex explained, as they prepared to disembark. Corporate supply ships depart daily. With the right incentives, getting you aboard one shouldn't be difficult. We appreciate the assistance, Marcus told him sincerely. Your people have taken significant risks on our behalf. Dex's cybernetic eye whirred softly as it focused on him. The Genesis technology is too dangerous to leave in corporate hands. Our goals align, Captain Rain, at least in this matter. As they moved through the trading post's bustling corridors, Marcus kept Saris close, acutely aware of the precious cargo she carried. The diverse crowd, humans mingling with various alien species, corporate employees beside frontier traders, provided excellent cover, but also countless opportunities for discovery. Keep moving, Frost murmured, leading them toward a quieter section of the station. Our contact is waiting at docking level 3, Bay 17. They boarded a crowded lift, descending through the station's levels. The deeper they went, the less corporate influence was evident, company logos giving way to independent merchants and establishments of questionable legality. Docking level 3 was reserved primarily for smaller vessels, personal shuttles, courier ships, and the occasional bounty hunter's craft. Bay 17 turned out to be a private docking and maintenance facility, its entrance guarded by a bored-looking Threllan, whose 4 eyes barely glanced up from his entertainment feed as they approached. "Frost," the guard acknowledged. "Dex, they're expecting you inside." The bay beyond housed a sleek courier vessel, undergoing repairs. Its engine components spread across the floor in organized chaos. A human woman in oil-stained coveralls straightened as they entered, wiping her hands on a rag. "Right on time," she greeted them. "I'm Kara. Dex said you need passage to Aurora Emphan?" "That's right," Marcus confirmed. "Discreet passage." Kara studied their group, her experienced eyes taking in details most would miss. "Corporate supply ship leaves tomorrow morning. The Abundant Provision, hauling terraforming equipment and personnel to Aurora Emphan's northern settlement. I can get you aboard as part of a maintenance crew inspection team." She paused. "But there's a complication." "There always is," Wrench muttered. "Biosite security has increased across the sector," Kara explained. "They're searching for something specific, running enhanced bioscans on all vessels heading toward Aurora Emphan." Marcus exchanged glances with Saris. "The Genesis sample." "If that's what you're carrying, you've got a serious problem," Kara continued. "These aren't standard scans. They're using new tech, specifically designed to detect unusual biological signatures." "How do we get past them?" Rico asked. Kara moved to a workbench, activating a holographic display. "There's a shielded compartment on the Abundant Provision, a secure cargo hold used for transporting sensitive materials. The bioscans don't penetrate it effectively." "And how do we access this compartment?" Marcus inquired. "I'm guessing it's not open to maintenance crews." "No, but the ship's second officer is amenable to financial persuasion. For the right price, he can get you access." "How much?" Marcus asked, mentally calculating their dwindling resources. The figure Kara named made him wince. "That's steep." "That's the market rate for risking a corporate execution," she replied bluntly. "Biosite doesn't mess around with smugglers these days." Marcus turned to Dex. "Any chance the Resistance could help with this expense?" The older man shook his head regretfully. "We've stretched our resources getting you this far. The credits simply aren't available." A tense silence fell over the group. Without access to the shielded compartment, the Genesis sample would almost certainly be detected during boarding scans. But the price for that access was far beyond their means. "I might have a solution," Saris spoke up unexpectedly. "But it would require trust and risk." All eyes turned to her. "The trading post has medical facilities," she continued. "With the right equipment, I could temporarily modify the Genesis Matrix's energy signature, make it appear as standard terraforming material rather than the unique sample it is." "Is that possible?" Marcus asked. "I thought the Matrix was basically unchangeable." "Its core programming is fixed," Saris acknowledged. "But its external energy signature can be masked for short periods, perhaps long enough to board the supply ship and reach the secure compartment." "How short is short?" Wrench wanted to know. 3 hours, perhaps 4. Kara whistled. "Cutting it close. The journey from boarding to departure takes at least 2 hours. Plus, however long it takes you to access the secure hold. It's our best option," Marcus decided. "Kara, can you get us access to medical equipment? The kind used for biotechnology research?" "Possibly. There's a clinic in the commercial district that caters to corporate researchers. For another fee." "Of course," Marcus sighed. "How much?" The second figure was only slightly less painful than the first. Combined, They would leave Marcus and his crew virtually penniless, assuming they could scrape together enough to begin with. "We'll make it work," he assured Kara. "Have everything ready by morning." As the details were arranged, Marcus pulled his crew aside. "We need to pool resources. Everything we've got." They emptied their accounts, credit chips, emergency funds, even Wrench's collection of rare mechanical components that could be sold for a decent sum. It was still not enough. Saris observed their dilemma silently, then removed an ornate bracelet from her wrist. The metal appeared to be simple silver, but the intricate patterns suggested ceremonial significance. "This should cover the remainder," she said, offering it to Marcus. "It is crafted from lunaria, a metal unique to my world, quite valuable to collectors of exotic materials." "I can't ask you to give up something personal," Marcus protested. "You didn't ask," she replied simply. "I offered. Besides, its value to our mission far exceeds its personal significance." With reluctance, Marcus accepted the bracelet, adding it to their pool of resources. Kara, upon examining it, confirmed its substantial value. "This will cover everything, with some left over," she announced. "I'll make the arrangements. Be ready at 0600 station time." As the Resistance members departed to secure their own transportation back to Korath V, Marcus and his crew were led to cramped but private quarters adjacent to the docking bay, temporary accommodations for crews between ships. "Get some rest," Marcus instructed his people. "Tomorrow we'll test all of us." The quarters consisted of 2 small rooms, with basic amenities. Wrench and Rico took one, while Soren claimed a corner of the other, immediately closing his eyes in his peculiar state of alert rest. This left Marcus and Saris to share the remaining space, an arrangement that might have been awkward under different circumstances. As it was, their bond made conventional privacy concerns seem almost irrelevant. They were already connected on a level far more intimate than physical proximity could match. While the others slept, Saris guided Marcus through a more intentional exploration of their bond. Seated cross-legged on the floor, facing each other, they closed their eyes and focused on the connection between them. "The Salandris has many aspects," she explained, her voice soft in the dimly lit room. "Energy transfer, as you experienced earlier, is merely the most basic. With practice, we can share thoughts, memories, even sensory experiences." "Like telepathy?" Marcus asked. "Similar, but more selective. It requires intention from both participants, a willingness to share rather than an invasion of privacy." Under her guidance, Marcus found himself able to project simple concepts across their bond: images, emotions, basic ideas. In return, he received similar impressions from Saris, glimpses of her homeworld, the weight of her responsibilities as a guardian, her concern for the Genesis Matrix's safety. "This is incredible," he admitted as they concluded the session. "It's like having a new sense I never knew existed." "The bond will continue to develop," she told him. "What seems remarkable now will become natural with time." "If we survive tomorrow," he added grimly. "Yes," she acknowledged. "There is that condition." Marcus leaned back against the wall, suddenly weary. "Do you ever question it? Your mission? Your duty as a guardian?" Saris considered the question carefully. "There have been moments of doubt," she admitted. "The path of a guardian is solitary by design. We are taught to value duty above personal connection." "Sounds lonely." "It can be," she agreed. "Which is perhaps why the Salandris bond is both celebrated and feared among my people. It represents both our greatest strength and our greatest vulnerability." "Because it ties you to someone else," Marcus surmised. "Makes you dependent." "Yes, but it also offers something many guardians secretly long for: a true partner, one who understands the burden we carry." The conversation lapsed into comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, yet connected by the gentle hum of their bond. Eventually, Marcus stretched out on his assigned bunk, while Saris assumed her meditative posture on a mat nearby. "Saris," he said quietly, just before sleep claimed him. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad we met." Through their bond, he felt her response, a warm pulse of agreement that needed no words. Morning arrived too quickly. Station time announced by the gradual brightening of the habitat's environmental lighting. Marcus roused his crew, ensuring everyone was clear on their roles in the plan. "Remember, we're corporate maintenance contractors," he reminded them. "Boring. By-the-book types just doing a job. No one looks twice at maintenance." Kara arrived precisely at 0600, bearing coveralls emblazoned with corporate logos and the necessary documentation to support their cover identities. "The clinic is expecting you," she informed Saris. "Equipment's been prepared according to your specifications. You have 1 hour before we need to head to the boarding area." The medical facility was small, but well-equipped, catering primarily to corporate researchers requiring discretion for projects of questionable legality. The staff asked no questions, simply pointing them to a private laboratory and leaving them to their work. Marcus watched in fascination as Saris prepared the Genesis matrix for its temporary modification. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, as she connected the sample to various diagnostic equipment. "The process requires focus," she explained. "I must alter the energy signature without disrupting the core programming." "Is it dangerous?" "For the matrix, no. For me—" She hesitated. "There is some risk. The alteration creates feedback that can be uncomfortable for a guardian to process." "Uncomfortable how?" "Imagine your nervous system being recalibrated without anesthesia," she replied matter-of-factly. "It is manageable, but not pleasant." Marcus frowned. "Is there any way I can help? Through the bond, maybe." "Yes." She seemed surprised by the offer. "Your presence as Valkai could help stabilize the connection, reducing the feedback considerably." "Then I'm in," he decided. "Just tell me what to do." Under Saris's guidance, Marcus positioned himself opposite her. The Genesis matrix suspended between them in a field of energy generated by the medical equipment. Placing his hands on the control interface where hers already rested, he closed his eyes and focused on their bond. The process began slowly, a subtle shift in the energy flowing between them. Then, abruptly, the intensity increased, a surge of raw power coursing through their connection. Marcus gasped, his eyes flying open to find Saris's face contorted in concentration, her freckles pulsing rapidly. Through their bond, he felt what she was experiencing, a searing sensation like fire racing along every nerve. Instinctively, he tried to absorb some of the feedback, drawing it away from her and into himself. "Careful," she warned through gritted teeth. "Too much could overwhelm you." "I can handle it," he insisted, continuing to siphon away a portion of the pain. The minutes stretched endlessly as they worked together, the matrix gradually changing its energy signature under their combined influence. By the time the process was complete, both were drenched in sweat, trembling with exhaustion. "It's done," Saris announced, carefully removing the matrix from the equipment. "The masking will hold for approximately 4 hours. "Just enough time," Marcus noted, checking the clock. "If everything goes according to plan." "A significant if," she acknowledged. They rejoined the others, who had been waiting anxiously outside the lab. Kara led them through less-traveled corridors toward the supply ship's boarding area, avoiding the main concourses where corporate security presence would be heaviest. "The abundant provision is at Docking Bay 12, she explained as they walked. "Boarding has already begun for essential personnel. Maintenance crews are scheduled last, which works in our favor. Less time for anyone to question your presence." The massive supply ship dominated the view as they approached, its utilitarian design emphasizing function over aesthetics. Corporate logos decorated its hull, and loading drones bustled around it, securing cargo for the journey to Aurora Sifos. The second officer, your contact, is named Holt, Kara continued. He'll be checking maintenance personnel at the tertiary boarding point. Give him this. She handed Marcus a small data chip, along with half the agreed payment. The rest when you're safely in the secure hold. Understood, Marcus confirmed, securing the chip in his pocket. And if something goes wrong? Kara's expression turned grim. Then you're on your own. I can't risk being connected to a failed smuggling operation. Biosite doesn't just execute the smugglers. They go after everyone in the chain. Fair enough, Marcus acknowledged. Thank you for your help. Don't thank me yet, she replied. Thank me when you're safely on Aurora Heth. With final instructions exchanged, Kara departed, melting into the station's crowd. Marcus turned to his crew, noting the tension in their postures despite the casual maintenance uniforms. Relax, he advised. Maintenance crews are invisible. Act bored, act tired. Act like this is just another routine job. They approached the tertiary boarding point, joining the queue of actual maintenance personnel waiting to board. The line moved slowly, each worker subjected to identification verification and basic security scans. Marcus studied the officer checking credentials, a middle-aged man with the weary expression of someone who had long since stopped caring about his job. This had to be Holt. When their turn came, Marcus presented their documentation, making eye contact with the officer. Maintenance inspection team for environmental systems, he stated flatly. Bay 12 through 16. Holt examined their credentials with practiced indifference. Standard procedure today? Nothing standard about 4 hours of crawling through ventilation shafts, Marcus replied, with just the right note of job-induced bitterness. But yeah, standard inspection. He slipped the data chip and half their remaining credits onto the checkpoint counter. Holt's hand moved over them, making both disappear with the skill of a professional gambler. Proceed to Bay 14, the officer instructed, his tone unchanged. Environmental systems are reporting fluctuations. Might want to start there. Appreciated, Marcus replied, understanding the coded instructions. Bay 14 must be near the secure hold. They passed through the checkpoint without incident, the basic security scan registering nothing unusual. Ceres's modifications to the Genesis matrix were holding. The interior of the abundant provision was a maze of corridors, cargo areas, and maintenance tunnels. Following Holt's subtle directions, they made their way to Bay 14, located in the ship's midsection. Now what? Wrench whispered as they arrived at the designated area. We wait, Marcus replied. Holt will contact us when it's safe to move to the secure hold. The wait stretched longer than anticipated. The ship's departure procedures continued around them, crew members and corporate personnel moving purposefully through the corridors. Occasionally, someone would glance their way, but the maintenance uniforms performed their magic, rendering them effectively invisible. 2 hours into boarding procedures, Marcus began to worry. The masking on the Genesis matrix had a finite duration. They needed to reach the secure hold before it failed. Something's wrong, Rico voiced what they were all thinking. Holt should have contacted us by now. Maybe he got held up, Wrench suggested without much conviction. Or maybe he took our credits and left us hanging, Marcus said grimly. We need a backup plan. Before they could formulate one, a ship-wide announcement echoed through the corridors. All personnel, prepare for departure. Final systems check in progress. Departure in 15 minutes. We're out of time, Ceres said urgently. The Matrix's masking will begin to deteriorate in less than an hour. If we're not in the secure hold by then, the decision crystallized in Marcus's mind. We find it ourselves, he declared. Soren, Wrench, create a distraction. Something mechanical that requires attention but won't actually damage the ship. Rico, use your navigation skills to locate the secure hold. It has to be on the ship's schematics somewhere. And if we're caught? Wrench asked. Then we're just maintenance doing our job, Marcus replied. Lost, confused, following outdated orders. play dumb if necessary. The crew dispersed to their tasks. Soren and Wrench headed toward an environmental control junction, while Rico accessed a maintenance terminal, her fingers flying over the interface as she searched for the secure hold's location. "Got it," she announced after tense minutes. "Deck 3, Section F, heavily shielded area designated for specialized cargo transport." "That has to be it." "How do we get there from here?" "Maintenance tunnels," Rico replied, downloading the route to her portable device. "They run parallel to most major corridors. We can access them through that panel." A distant alarm suddenly blared, Soren and Wrench's distraction taking effect. Crew members rushed toward the source, creating the perfect opportunity for Marcus, Saris, and Rico to slip into the maintenance tunnel unobserved. The narrow passage was designed for utility rather than comfort, forcing them to move in single file, ducking under pipes and squeezing past junction boxes. Rico led the way, consulting her device at each intersection. "Down this ladder," she directed, pointing to a vertical shaft. 3 levels, then east toward the outer hull. They descended rapidly, the sounds of the ship preparing for departure growing more distant. Deck 3 was quieter, primarily cargo space with minimal crew presence. "Section F should be just ahead," Rico whispered, as they emerged from the maintenance tunnel into a dimly lit corridor. The secure hold was immediately obvious, a heavily reinforced door with multiple security systems, set apart from the standard cargo bays. A sign warned of restricted access and severe penalties for unauthorized entry. "Now what?" Rico asked. "We don't have the access codes." Marcus studied the security panel. "We paid for access. Let's see if Holt delivered." He removed the remaining credits from his pocket and waved them before the scanner. A crude but effective signal if the second officer was monitoring the area. Nothing happened for several long seconds. Then, just as Marcus was about to try something else, the security panel blinked from red to green. The massive door began to slide open. "Inside, quickly," he urged, ushering Saris and Rico through the opening. The secure hold was smaller than expected, perhaps 5 meters square, and already partially filled with containers bearing hazard warnings. The walls were lined with a material Marcus didn't recognize, presumably the shielding that blocked bioscans. "It worked," Rico breathed, relief evident in her voice. "Now we just need Soren and Wrench to join us." "I'll signal them," Marcus began, reaching for his communicator. A sudden noise from the corridor interrupted him, footsteps approaching rapidly. The door, still open, left them exposed to whoever was coming. "Hide!" he hissed, pushing Rico behind a stack of containers. Before he and Saris could find cover, a figure appeared in the doorway. Not Soren or Wrench, but a corporate security officer in full tactical gear. "Maintenance inspection," Marcus improvised quickly. "We were told to check the environmental systems in all cargo areas." The officer's hand moved to his weapon. "This is a restricted area. Maintenance has no authorization for access." "Our orders came from Officer Holt," Marcus continued, maintaining the fiction. "If there's been a misunderstanding." "Holt has no authority over this section," the officer cut him off. "And we have no record of scheduled maintenance here." His gaze shifted to Saris, narrowing suspiciously. "Identification. Both of you. Now." Marcus tensed, calculating their options. The officer blocked the only exit, and his hand remained on his weapon, ready to draw at the first sign of trouble. Through their bond, he felt Saris's calm assessment of the situation. A subtle shift in her posture telegraphed her intent. She was preparing to move. "Sir, there's clearly been a mistake," Marcus continued, deliberately drawing the officer's attention to himself. "If you'll check with dispatch." The officer's communicator suddenly crackled to life. "Security alert. Unauthorized access to environmental systems in Bay 14. All available personnel respond." The distraction was brief, but sufficient. In the split second, the officer's attention wavered. Saris moved, a blur of motion too fast for ordinary human reflexes to track. Before the man could draw his weapon, she had closed the distance between them, her fingers finding precise pressure points on his neck. The officer collapsed without a sound, unconscious but unharmed. "Impressive," Marcus remarked. "Another guardian skill?" "Basic training," she replied modestly. "He will wake in approximately 20 minutes, with no memory of the past hour." Rico emerged from hiding, eyes wide. "That was too close." "And it might get closer," Marcus warned. "We need to secure this door and contact Soren and Wrench." Using the officer's own security credentials, they sealed the hold from the inside, ensuring no one else could enter without authorization codes. Marcus then sent a coded message to Soren's communicator, providing instructions to join them. "The ship is preparing for departure," Rico noted, checking her device. "Engines are powering up." "Good," Marcus replied. "Once we're in transit, security will be focused on external threats rather than internal issues." A gentle tremor ran through the floor as the abundant provision disengaged from the station's docking clamps. They were underway, committed to their course. "The Matrix's masking is holding," Saris reported, monitoring the sample. "But we have less than an hour before it begins to deteriorate." "Let's hope Soren and Wrench get here before then," Marcus said. "In the meantime, we should—" A series of coded knocks interrupted him. Rico rushed to the door, checking the external camera before unlocking it to admit Soren and Wrench. "Nice of you to join us," Marcus greeted them. "Any trouble?" "Nothing we couldn't handle," Wrench replied with a grin. "Soren created a cascade failure in the environmental systems that'll keep maintenance busy for hours. By the time they sort it out, we'll be halfway to Aurora Emphus." With the crew reunited and the secure hold locked down, they could finally relax, slightly. The ship had entered FTL transit, committing to its journey. They were safe for the moment. "How long to Aurora Emsa?" Marcus asked Rico. "Standard supply route takes 18 hours, she replied, assuming no delays. 18 hours in a cramped, secure hold with limited supplies and an increasingly unstable Genesis matrix. Not ideal, but far better than their alternatives. "We should rest in shifts," Marcus decided, two awake at all times to monitor the door and the matrix. As the others arranged themselves as comfortably as possible among the containers, Marcus joined Saris in examining the Genesis sample. Through their bond, he could sense her concern. "The masking is beginning to fail," she confirmed his suspicions. "Sooner than expected." "Can you reapply it?" She shook her head. "Not without the proper equipment. And attempting to do so might trigger an energy surge that would be detectable, even through this shielding. So we wait and hope we reach Aurora Emphta before anyone notices?" "Essentially, yes." She carefully returned the matrix to its pouch. "Though I can continue to suppress its energy signature to some degree. It will be taxing." "You mean painful," Marcus translated. "Like before." She didn't deny it. "The effort must be sustained over hours, rather than minutes. I will require your assistance through the bond." "Whatever you need," he promised without hesitation. They established a connection similar to the one they'd shared in the medical facility, but more subtle, a continuous flow of energy rather than the intense surge required for the masking procedure. Marcus found he could maintain it while remaining alert to their surroundings, though it created a constant drain on his reserves. Hours passed in tense vigilance. The secure hold remained undisturbed, the ship continuing its journey without incident. The crew took turns resting, though true sleep proved elusive in their precarious situation. It was during the 14th hour of transit that the first complication arose. A ship-wide announcement echoed through the hold. "Attention all personnel. Security scan in progress. Remain at your stations until the all-clear is issued." "That's not standard procedure during transit," Rico said immediately, alarmed. "Something's triggered heightened security." "The Matrix," Saris confirmed, her freckles pulsing with strain. Its energy signature is becoming increasingly difficult to suppress. They must have detected something. Will this shielding protect us? Wrench asked, glancing at the hold's unusual walls. It should, Saris replied. But I cannot be certain. Corporate scanning technology has advanced considerably in recent years. Marcus strengthened his connection to Saris, channeling more energy to help suppress the Matrix's signature. The effort left him lightheaded, but he pushed through the discomfort. How much longer to Aurora Ifan? He asked Rico. About 4 hours, she answered after consulting her device. Assuming this security procedure doesn't delay us. 4 hours. They needed to hold out just 4 more hours. The minutes crawled by, tension mounting as they waited for the security scan to complete. Through the ship's internal communications, they could hear fragments of crew chatter, something about anomalous energy readings, sections being methodically searched. They're getting closer, Wrench warned, monitoring the communications. Deck 4 has been cleared. They're moving to Deck 3 next. Marcus exchanged glances with Saris. Options? Limited, she admitted. The shielding should protect us. But if they specifically target this hold for inspection, we fight our way out, Wrench suggested, checking her weapon. Against an entire corporate security team? We wouldn't make it 10 meters, Rico countered. Soren, who had been silent throughout the discussion, suddenly spoke. Diversion. All eyes turned to him. Cargo jettison, he elaborated, pointing to the emergency controls near the door. Create false alarm. Brilliant. Marcus realized what he was suggesting. If we trigger the emergency jettison protocol for another cargo bay, security would be forced to respond. Risky, Wrench cautioned, if they trace it back to this hold. Better than waiting to be discovered, Marcus decided. Rico, can you access the ship's emergency systems from here? She moved to the control panel. I can try. These maintenance terminals have limited functionality, but with some creative bypassing. As Rico worked, the sounds of the security team grew closer, methodical movement through Deck 3, section by section. They're at Section C, Wrench reported tensely. 2 sections away. Working on it, Rico muttered, fingers flying across the terminal. The system's fighting me, but... Got it. Emergency protocols accessed. Which cargo bay should we target? Something far from here, Marcus suggested. Bay 30 would draw them to the aft section. Rico input the commands. Initiating emergency jettison warning for cargo bay 30 in 3, 2, 1. Alarms immediately blared throughout the ship, the emergency lighting shifting to pulsing red. The automated announcement system activated. Warning, cargo jettison imminent in Bay 30. All personnel evacuate the area. Security teams respond immediately. Through the communications, they heard the security team's response. Orders shouted, boots pounding as they rushed toward the threatened cargo bay. It worked, Wrench breathed, relieved. They're moving away. Temporarily, Marcus cautioned. Once they realize it's a false alarm, they'll resume their search. But it buys us time, Saris noted. Perhaps enough to reach Aurora Effarth before they return to this section. The diversionary tactics succeeded better than they'd hoped. The false jettison alarm triggered a ship-wide security protocol, requiring extensive systems checks before the search could resume. By the time normal operations were restored, the abundant provision was approaching Aurora de Vinta's orbit. Final approach announced, Soren reported, monitoring the communications. Docking in 30 minutes. We made it, Wrench said, allowing herself a cautious smile. Now, we just need to get off this ship without being caught. That's where our maintenance cover comes in handy again, Marcus explained. We exit with the regular crews during docking procedures. The confusion of arrival should provide adequate cover. The plan was sound in theory. In practice, it faced an immediate obstacle. As the ship prepared for docking, a new announcement echoed through the corridors. Attention all personnel. Due to security concerns, disembarkation will be controlled and sequential. All crew members must report to their supervisors for identity verification before leaving the vessel. That complicates things, Rico noted grimly. We don't have real supervisors to report to. We need another way off, Marcus agreed. Maintenance access to the docking ports? Rico checked the ship's schematics on her device. Possible, but risky. Those areas will be monitored during docking. What about cargo offloading? Wrench suggested. We could hide in containers being transferred to the surface. Too slow, Saris interjected, her voice strained from the continuing effort to suppress the matrix. The sample's energy signature is becoming critical. We need to reach the Guardian outpost within hours. Marcus felt the urgency through their bond, a pressing sense that time was running dangerously short. The Genesis matrix was approaching a threshold beyond which even Saris couldn't control it. A new idea formed in his mind. Dangerous, but potentially effective. The executive shuttle bay, he said suddenly. Corporate officers use private shuttles to reach the surface, rather than waiting for standard transport. We'd never get clearance, Rico objected. We don't need clearance, Marcus countered. Just access. During docking, security will be focused on controlling crew movement. The executive area might have minimal oversight. It was a gamble, but their options were rapidly diminishing. As the abundant provision entered Aurora Afinth's orbit, they prepared to make their move. Leaving the secure hold required timing and nerve. Using the security officer's credentials, which remained valid despite his unfortunate encounter with Saris, they unlocked the door and checked the corridor. Finding it momentarily empty, they slipped out, moving purposefully toward the nearest maintenance tunnel. Executive Shuttle Bay is on Deck 1, Rico whispered, leading them through the narrow passage. 2 levels up and forward. They climbed rapidly, emerging near a crew lounge that provided access to the upper decks. The ship was in final docking procedures. Most personnel focused on their assigned tasks, making it easier to move unnoticed through less trafficked areas. The executive section, when they reached it, was noticeably different from the utilitarian corridors of the lower decks. Polished surfaces, comfortable lighting, and actual artwork on the walls signaled that this area catered to corporate leadership rather than working crew. Shuttle bay should be through there. Rico indicated a set of double doors at the end of the corridor. A single security officer stood guard, looking bored with his assignment. Marcus adjusted his maintenance uniform, then approached confidently. Environmental systems check, he announced, displaying his forged credentials. Shuttle bay reported atmosphere fluctuations. The guard frowned. I don't have any record of scheduled maintenance. Just came in, Marcus replied smoothly. Something about pressure differentials affecting the executive shuttles. Priority order. The guard hesitated, clearly reluctant to turn away maintenance addressing a potential issue with the executive's transportation. Fine, but make it quick. Executives will be boarding for surface transport within the hour. Won't take long, Marcus assured him, as the guard stepped aside to allow their group through. The shuttle bay housed 3 sleek vessels, each bearing corporate logos and designed for comfort as much as function. Unlike the utilitarian transport pods used by regular crew, these shuttles featured luxury appointments and advanced navigation systems. Can any of you fly one of these? Marcus asked, once they were out of the guard's earshot. I can, Rico replied. The controls are similar to standard transports, just with more bells and whistles. Good. Prepare the nearest one for launch, quietly. While Rico worked on the shuttle, Marcus and the others kept watch, aware that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. Through his bond with Saris, he could feel her struggling, the effort to contain the Matrix's energy signature, draining her reserves. How much longer can you hold it? He asked quietly. Minutes, she admitted. Perhaps half an hour at most. The shuttle's ready, Rico announced from the vessel's open hatch. But we have a problem. Launch authorization requires executive codes. Can you bypass it? Not without triggering alarms, she replied. These systems have multiple redundancies. Marcus thought quickly. What about an emergency launch protocol? These shuttles must have override procedures for evacuations. Rico's eyes lit up. Yes, the safety protocols would allow immediate launch in case of shipboard emergency. She returned to the controls, searching through the system options. Here it is. Emergency evacuation sequence. It will trigger alarms, but we'll be away before they can respond. Do it, Marcus decided. Everyone aboard now. They crowded into the shuttle, securing themselves in the luxurious seats as Rico initiated the emergency protocol. Alarms immediately blared throughout the bay, and the shuttle's systems came fully online. Bay doors opening, she reported, hands moving confidently over the controls. Automatic launch sequence in 10 seconds. On the bay's external cameras, they could see security personnel rushing toward them, weapons drawn. Too late. The shuttle was already lifting off, the artificial gravity compensators keeping them stable as they accelerated away from the abundant provision. Setting course for the surface, Rico announced. Where exactly is this Guardian outpost? Saris provided coordinates for a location in Aurora Empfine's northern hemisphere, far from the main corporate settlements. It appears to be wilderness on most maps, she explained. A deliberate misdirection. The outpost is hidden beneath the surface. The shuttle broke atmosphere, descending toward the planet below. Aurora Empfine was a study in contrasts, vast wilderness areas interrupted by precise geometric patterns of corporate development. Their destination lay in a mountainous region that showed no signs of human habitation. Corporate pursuit vessels launching, Wrench warned, monitoring the scanner. 3 craft, heavily armed. They'll overtake us before we reach the coordinates. Evasive maneuvers, Marcus ordered. Rico, can you lose them in the mountains? I can try, she replied, banking the shuttle sharply toward a jagged range ahead. These executive shuttles are faster than standard security vessels, but they're not designed for combat maneuvers. The pursuit became a dangerous game of cat and mouse through Aurora Empfine's northern mountains. Rico pushed the shuttle to its limits, using the terrain to block sensor coverage and confuse their pursuers. The corporate vessels, however, were persistent, gradually closing the distance despite her best efforts. We can't outrun them much longer, she admitted, as warning indicators flashed across the control panel. Engines are overheating from sustained maximum output. How close are we to the outpost? Marcus asked Saris. Very close, she replied, her voice weak from the continuing strain of containing the matrix. Perhaps 5 minutes at current speed. We need those 5 minutes, Marcus decided. Wrench, does this shuttle have any defensive capabilities? The mechanic had been examining the vessel's systems. Nothing lethal, but it does have high-intensity landing lights designed for poor visibility conditions. If we trigger them at full power and swing around to face our pursuers, we could blind them temporarily, Marcus finished. Do it. Rico executed a sharp turn, bringing them face to face with the lead pursuit vessel. Wrench maximized the landing lights, sending a blinding flash toward their pursuers. The maneuver worked. The corporate vessels broke formation, momentarily disoriented. Rico seized the opportunity, diving the shuttle into a narrow canyon that their scanners indicated led toward the Guardian outpost coordinates. 2 minutes out, she reported, but I don't see any signs of a facility. It's hidden, Saris explained, struggling to her feet. Approach the coordinates exactly. I will signal the outpost. As they neared the destination, a seemingly unremarkable cliff face in the canyon wall, Saris removed the Genesis matrix from its pouch. Despite her efforts to suppress it, the sample now glowed intensely, pulsing with barely contained energy. What are you doing? Marcus asked, alarmed by the matrix's appearance. Creating a recognition signal, she replied. The outpost's security systems will identify the matrix's specific energy signature. She held the sample toward the forward viewport, allowing its light to shine unimpeded. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, A section of the cliff face shimmered and disappeared, revealing a concealed hangar bay. "There!" Wrench exclaimed. "Rico, take us in!" The shuttle darted into the opening just as the corporate vessels reappeared at the canyon's entrance. The cliff face re-solidified behind them, sealing them safely inside a vast, technologically advanced facility. Guardian Outpost Aurora. Saris identified it, relief evident in her voice. "We made it." The shuttle settled onto a landing pad, where several figures were already approaching. Tall, blue-skinned beings, similar to Saris, their bioluminescent markings glowing in complex patterns. "Your people," Marcus observed as the shuttle powered down. "Yes," she confirmed. "Fellow Guardians, they will secure the Matrix properly." As they disembarked, the waiting Guardians greeted Saris with formal gestures that seemed to carry deep significance. She responded in kind, then presented the Genesis Matrix, now pulsing erratically with barely contained energy. One Guardian, distinguished by more elaborate markings, stepped forward to take the sample, securing it in a sophisticated containment device that immediately stabilized its fluctuating signature. "The Matrix is safe," Saris told Marcus, the strain finally leaving her features. "You have fulfilled your part in this, Valkai." The lead Guardian turned to study Marcus and his crew, luminescent eyes widening slightly as they observed him. Words were exchanged in their native language, too rapid for the universal translator to process. "What's happening?" Marcus asked Saris. "They sense our bond," she explained. "It is unprecedented for a Guardian to form Salandris with a human. They are concerned." "Concerned or disapproving?" "Both, perhaps," she admitted. "Guardian traditions are ancient and not easily changed." The lead Guardian addressed Marcus directly, the translator finally catching up. "Human, do you understand what you have become through the bond with Guardian Saris?" "Not entirely," Marcus replied honestly. "I know we're connected in ways I don't fully comprehend. I know it saved my life and helped us protect the Genesis Matrix." The Guardian's freckles pulsed in what might have been surprise. "Your candor is refreshing. Most species would claim greater understanding than they possess." He turned to Saris. "The Council must be informed of these developments, both the Matrix's recovery and your unusual bond." "I understand, Elder Tyvus," she acknowledged. "I am prepared to face the consequences of my choices." "Consequences?" Marcus interjected, suddenly alert to potential danger. "What consequences?" "The Salandris bond is sacred among our people," Elder Tyvos explained. "It is traditionally formed only between Guardians who have completed their training and received the Council's blessing. Saris acted without authorization. She did it to save my life," Marcus argued. "And without our bond, the Genesis Matrix would have been lost to Biosite or the Kasabians. Surely that counts for something." The Elder's expression remained impassive. "The outcome does not change the breach of protocol. Guardian Saris will be evaluated by the Council. Until then, you and your companions will remain here as guests of the outpost." As Elder Tyvos departed with the secured Matrix, Marcus turned to Saris. "Are you in danger? Be honest with me." Through their bond, he could sense her uncertainty and her resolve. "Not physical danger," she assured him. "But my future as a Guardian may be in question. The bond we share has changed me in ways the Council may find problematic." "Because I'm human? Because our bond formed spontaneously, without the traditional preparations and rituals. Such bonds are rare and often indicate a deeper pattern at work, one that transcends our individual choices." "Destiny again," Marcus remarked with a wry smile. "Indeed," she acknowledged. "A concept you find uncomfortable, yet here we are." Marcus looked around at the Guardian facility, a place humans had never been meant to see, filled with technology beyond corporate understanding. His crew stood nearby, equally awed by their surroundings. Against all odds, they had delivered the Genesis Matrix safely, Their mission was complete. Yet, it didn't feel like an ending. Through his bond with Saris, Marcus sensed that this was merely the beginning of something far larger than a simple cargo delivery gone wrong. "What happens now?" he asked, meeting her luminescent gaze. "Now," she replied, her freckles pulsing with determination. "We face the council together, as Valkai, partners in whatever comes next." Marcus nodded, accepting the path before them. Whatever the Guardian Council decided, whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them, as they had faced everything since that fateful moment, when a simple scratch had changed the course of their lives forever. Together,